Hey guys, ever wonder what it's like to get paid in olive oil and awkward glances while trying not to catch typhoid? Picture this. You're standing under the blazing sun of the Roman Forum, draped in a tunic 2 sizes too small, your only shade a passing senator's toga. That's your life. 5 seconds to flirt, 10 seconds to negotiate, and a lifetime to scrub off the grit and shame. Ready for a day in the sandals of an ancient Roman sex worker? Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. You wake before dawn because even back then, rise and grind was a real thing. Only your grind involved public latrines and the pungent challenge of yesterday's street food leftovers. You sling your scant tunica over your shoulders and lace up sandals that were probably cobbled from someone's discarded goat hide. As you step into the alleyway, the stones underneath bite into your bare heels, reminding you that modern pedicures are a luxury only emperors enjoy. First task, hygiene. Yeah, right. You wash in a stone basin, wrestling with a bar of lye soap so harsh it could strip paint off a warship. It dries your skin to the consistency of old parchment, but hey, at least you're marginally cleaner than yesterday. You snatch up a handful of perfumed oils, probably imported from Alexandria, and rub them on like armor, hoping the scent will mask your inevitable sweat and bodily odors once business picks up. Back in the day, plumbing meant a bucket under the bed and a wish. You tiptoe around it like a minefield. No one wants a surprise ambush mid-kiss. After your quick facility check, you step outside, tuning your senses the way gladiators sharpen their eyes for combat. The Forum is alive. Senators arguing over tax brackets, merchants hawking garum, fish sauce so potent it could wake the dead, and prostitutes positioning themselves like moths around flames of flirtation. At sunrise, the first clients arrive. Groggy men clutching drachmas, still half dreaming of their wives, who, ironically, probably wish their husbands had stayed in bed. You greet each one with a practiced smile that says, "I'm glad to see you." But that also screams, "Please make it quick. My feet are killing me." Your hook is half your body, half your wits, a tilt of the head, a whisper of promise. In 15 seconds flat, you've pitched the benefits of your services. No birth control crisis here. Just pure, unfiltered Roman realism. Negotiation was an art form. They'd wave coins, bronze for basic services, silver for something a little more elaborate, gold if you had imperial aspirations. They'd haggle. 10 asses? No way, you grovel like a slave. Okay, 8 and I'll bring my friend next time. You nod, pretend to consider, then lower your eyes demurely. Classic move, and they pat the money onto your palm, convinced they won the deal. The act itself? Let's just say ergonomics weren't invented until centuries later. The only pillow was a rough-hewn stone or a rolled cloak, leaving your back aching as if you'd wrestled a bear. And the positions? Somewhere between creative contortionist and tortured mosaic subject. By minute 3, you're fantasizing about a day job, maybe laundry, maybe mending nets, anything without the threat of unsolicited spittle. But the real thrills came afterward. You'd gather the coins, jiggling them in your leather pouch, each clink a small victory. You stroll to the baths, fragrance wafting around you, pretending to be a patrician on a spa day. But the baths were public, with zero privacy, crowds of sweaty bodies, steam clouds hugging the ceiling, and the constant risk of someone recognizing you. You'd duck your head under the lukewarm water, scrub off the grime, and wonder if any of this was worth the 3 sesterces you made this morning. Evening rolls around and you're dispatched to the insula, the densely packed tenements where your clientele lived. Climbing narrow staircases 2 steps at a time is the day's final cardio. Each landing smells of mildew, rotting food, and the occasional sick goat. You find the room, dark, windowless, lit by a single oil lamp that sputters like it's failing just to spite you. The mattress is a stuffed goat hair sack that was probably used as a rock-paper-scissors prop in a child's fight. Here, the rules change. No haggling, no small talk, just the bare minimum. The client fumbles for coins, coercing more by patting his belly. You do your duty with the enthusiasm of someone playing fetch with a particularly unmotivated dog. 30 seconds of performance art that leaves you more exhausted than a senator filibustering a tax bill. He's done. You're done. You collapse onto that goat hair mattress, and everything aches. Yet, as you collect your coins in the flickering lamplight, you can't help but feel a pulse of grim satisfaction. You're a tiny gear in the vast Roman machine. A machine built on law, architecture, and maritime conquests, yes, but powered in small part by your daily hustle. You step back into the street, tunic damp with sweat, hair sticky from oil, and head back to the public latrines to clean up your final act. Night brings its own perils. Street gangs, emboldened by wine, roam between torches looking for easy marks. You keep to the lit roads, hugging walls, silently pleading that no one decides to mug you for the day's earnings. If fortune is with you, you make it home without incident. If not, you bargain with the gods that Mercurius, patron of thieves, takes pity and only relieves you of your sandals. Back at your insula, you close your tiny wooden shutter, the moonlight slicing across your floor. You spread out your silver and bronze coins, a modest harvest, enough to buy a small loaf of bread, 2 figs, and maybe some goat cheese if your butcher's feeling generous. You wrap your coins up, tuck them under your pillow, and lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if the next day will be any less absurd. Sleep is fitful. Dreams of toga-clad patricians bowing in reverence to your services are interrupted by nightmares of legionnaires demanding discounts. You wake before dawn again, muscles tense, skin itchy, frustrated by the thought that you'll do it all over tomorrow, for coins that barely cover the cost of another round of those perfumed oils. But hey, at least you're alive. You survived another day in one of history's greatest civilizations, not as a general or senator, but as someone whose labor was in high demand yet low in status. You're the underbelly of the empire, the unspoken shame behind its grandeur. Without you, the forum would be emptier, the baths less frequented, and the empire's moral hypocrisies less visible. So here's to you, the unsung, the unglorified, the Roman prostitute. Your sweat anointing stone walls, your giggles echoing off marble columns, your coins fueling the fascination of patricians who'd never dare admit your importance. Tomorrow, you'll don your tunic again, lace those goat-hide sandals, and step into the gladiatorial arena of commerce and desire. And you'll tell yourself, at least it's not cold. See you next time for part 2, where we explore the perils of pregnancy tests. Spoiler, they don't exist. The black market for herbal abortifacients, and why Jupiter only looks out for the well-connected. Until then, keep your wits sharp, your sandals tied, and remember, history is messy, absurd, and often downright cruel. But without us little people, it'd be awfully boring. The next dawn creaks open like a half-forgotten door, and you roll out of your rickety cot with a churning stomach. Not from hunger this time, but from dread. Word has spread through the insulae about a new rumor. One of your more fortunate colleagues has discovered she's with child. In Rome, that's either a blessing or a death sentence. Pregnancy testing is guesswork. Priestesses at some shrines might divine your fate by reading the foam on your wine cup, or by examining the color of your urine against a crudely painted taper. But these methods are about as reliable as trusting a gladiator's promise of mercy. You, however, have budget constraints, so you rely on the oldest remedy in the book, gut feeling and a prayer to Juno Lucina. By mid-morning, you begin the hunt for herbal abortifacients. The market stalls are stacked with papyrus scrolls promising fertility cures and curses alike. You sniff through piles of rue, silphium, if you can afford the black market stashes, and pennyroyal, their scents mingling into an aroma that makes you want to vomit. A crooked apothecary offers you a simmered concoction in exchange for half your day's earnings. You sip it, grimace as bits of crushed bone rattled across your teeth, and pray it works faster than the next client's advance. If it doesn't, you'll be carrying the bastard spawn of some forgetful merchant who thinks consent is negotiable. By noon, your feet are throbbing from the relentless pavement of Via Sacra. You reposition yourself beneath a column carved with the name of a long-dead consul who probably never boarded your clitoris for a single sestertius. Here comes your first client of the day, a toga-wearing bureaucrat with the charm of a tax audit. He insists on haggling despite your grimace. That's his strategy. He'll pay you next time. Next time, you'll be knee-deep in morning sickness or worse if your herbal gamble fails. You slam your heel against the cobbles, stare him down, and refuse to budge. He coughs up the coins, victory. Afternoon brings you to the baths again, public, steamy, suffocatingly sociable. You slip into the tepid water, leaning against the basin rim. Women gossiping nearby compare notes, Which of them has taken up with a soldier quartered on the Palatine, whose house smells like fermented olives, whose flatmate confessed to spreading venereal sores? You chuckle at their drama because your own life is a soap opera with dirt and spirochetes. You rinse yourself, scrubbing away yesterday's evidence and today's anxieties, then slink into a corner to apply fresh oils and hide your bruises. The bath slaves scuttle past, carrying ladles of hot water and baskets of sponges, treating you like another layer of grime to be wiped off the Empire's conscience. By late afternoon, the Forum has emptied of respectable citizens and filled with tomboys in hooded cloaks, street performers playing lyres off-key, and bawdy merchants trying to sell mildly erotic pottery. This is your playground. You slip between vendors, scanning faces for someone who looks lonely enough to pay a premium. There's the foreign sailor, broad-shouldered, fair-haired, smelling of brine and dread. He offers a handful of denarii, more than you've seen in a week. You lead him down an alley lined with low doorways that vibrate with the groans of previous customers. Inside, the room is tighter than a miser's purse. The lantern on the shelf flickers like a dying votive flame. You spread out a cloak, signal him to undress, and brace yourself. The act is mercenary. Neither of you pretends otherwise. He grunts through rapid thrusts as if trying to expel the sea from his bones. You count silently. 1, 2, 3. Enough to fill your pouch, not enough to refill your soul. He's done, drenched, muttering apologies you couldn't follow if you tried. You toss him his tunic and slip out into the dusk before he can request a refund. Next comes the real challenge, counting your coins without the disturbance of thieving hands. You head to a quieter street where a kindly old woman runs a small shrine to Venus. She offers you a crude clay bowl in which to empty your purse and count your silver, reasoning that if Venus protects love, perhaps she'll protect your livelihood. You dump out your coins, 3 silver denarii, 8 bronze asses, and a battered token that might be ancient. You pocket the metal. Maybe it's lucky, or maybe it's just another piece of trash. Evening deepens, and you stumble upon a forum-side tavern where patrons drink watered-down wine and debate, loudly, whether the Republic still stands or whether Caesar will return as God King. You lean against a wall, nursing a cup with a single drop of wine soaking the bottom. The barkeep eyes you like a hawk, sizing up carrion. Not much tonight. He smirks. You shrug. What else can you do? You're low on supplies, oils, thirst-quenching wine, and those pricey herbs. You calculate. A loaf of bread costs 1 as, a filling stew is 3 asses, and a measure of cheap wine is half an as. You dump a coin into his jar and whisper, "Mark it," knowing you'll repay in labor, washing his amphora or cleaning his piss-stained tables. Under the dim lantern light, you overhear whispers about a new decree. Prostitutes are to wear a distinctive stola with a purple stripe, or face public flogging. This badge of shame is meant to segregate you from respectable matrons. You snort at the irony. A stola costs more than you make in a day, and the flogging would strip away any dignity you falsely clung to. You slip away before the speaker can finish his self-righteous tirade, merging into the crowd like a ghost. Night falls fully now, and you navigate the insula's narrow corridors by memory. Half the doorways are shuttered, half remain open, lantern light pulsing like heartbeats inside. You slip into your room, feet bleeding, back tense, hunger pinching at your belly. You unwrap a stale loaf of bread and some soft cheese, your meager dinner, and half listen to the drunken choir from the basement tavern. Their songs are bawdy, their laughter harsh, and you wonder how anyone sleeps through this chaos. As you drudge through dinner, your thoughts whirl. The risk of disease, the constant threat of pregnant disgrace, the future of a life that depends on other people's desperation and loneliness. You think of the herbal mixture you downed in the morning. No strong cramps yet, which might mean it's working, or it might mean nothing at all. Hope flickers and dies in the pit of your stomach, taking any illusions of security with it. Midnight beckons, and you decide to take your chances outside the city walls. Rumor has it that along the Via Latina, some farmers hire prostitutes privately. Safer rooms, better pay, and no decree enforcing magistrates. You wrap your cloak tighter and slip out into the moonlit street, the cool air a balm on your skin. Jogging footsteps echo behind you. You freeze, scanning for thieves. It's just another prostitute, her face painted too white, eyes wild with fear. You heading out? She whispers. You nod. Good luck, she sighs. You both disappear into the night, two shadows chasing uncertain fortunes. At a halfway villa, a farmer's wife meets you at the door. Her husband is away at war. She's lonely, anxious about Roman discipline, wanting solace in your company. She leads you inside, a simple room with straw on the floor and a lamp flickering low. The wine she offers is thicker than mud, but warms your throat. She confides her fears, raiders, crop failures, the next plague wave. You hold her hand, pretend to care, and remind yourself that empathy is just another tool of the trade. In the flicker of that lamp, you perform again, but this time there's something softer in the desperation. Two lives seeking comfort from each other in a world that demands strength above all else. When it's over, she presses a small coin purse into your hand, enough to feed you for 3 days. For a moment, you almost believe you've done something noble, but the moment dissolves as you step back into the night. You weave your way home under a canopy of stars that look so indifferent, you wonder why anyone invented gods. Back in your room, you collapse onto your mattress, muscles aching, mind spinning with yesterday's floggings, tomorrow's anxieties, and the ever-present threat of disease or decree. You unwrap the coin purse, 2 silver denarii, 13 bronze asses. Enough for oil, bread, maybe a sip of wine if you're disciplined. Your eyelids droop, but sleep is a distant promise. You lie there in sweaty darkness, counting coins, counting risks, counting reasons to keep going. Tomorrow, you'll face the Forum again, with its glaring columns and gaudy temples, its senators who legislate morality they don't practice, its citizens who condemn you while lining up at your door. You'll rise, you'll oil, you'll negotiate, you'll endure. And if this herbal concoction fails, well, you'll find another. In Rome, there's always another market stall, another apothecary, another oblivious client. You'll clutch your coins and your courage and step into the morning. Because in the end, surviving ancient Rome isn't about glory or honor. It's about outlasting the absurdity of it all. Sleep finally finds you as the first light of a new day bleeds through your shutter's cracks. Your body rests, but your mind is already drafting tomorrow's strategies. How to avoid the magistrate's new ordinances, which alley offers the best shade, which herbs soothe your nerves. You drift into dreams of running across the Forum naked, liberation or madness, you can't tell which. Tomorrow, part 3 awaits. We'll dive into the black market packs with pimps, the scourge of venereal diseases, and the delicate art of keeping your heart unscarred when your body is already beaten. Rest up, because the nightmare of history never ends. It just reinvents itself at dawn. Night doesn't bring relief. It only shifts the battleground. Part 3 begins as you peel yourself off the goat hair slab, joints creaking like a rusted gate, and face the consequences of yesterday's decisions. The morning air inside your insula is thick with damp and regret. You're limp from yesterday's exertions, and your gut coils with dread. Word on the street is that a magistrate's assistant is sniffing around for unauthorized brothel operations. If they catch wind of unsanctioned rooms or pimps skimming coins, they'll tear your world apart with a whip and a ledger. So your first order of business is damage control. You dress in your plainest tunic, no purple stripes, no hint of luxury, so you look like one of the countless laundry women who scrub tunics for patrician families. You tuck your leather pouch into a hidden pocket, wrap your hair loosely in a kerchief, and slink out into the narrow street. No swagger, no perfume, no eyelashes fluttering for clients, just a silhouette blending into the daily filth parade. Your destination is the crooked innkeeper by the Suburra, a man named Lucius Two-Tooth Valerius. 2 teeth missing, one eye half closed, and a smile that says he's always calculating 10% for himself. You owe him more than you can ever pay. He fronted your first batch of oils. He introduced you to the herbalist, and he lent you bronze for a new set of sandals. In return, he claims a cut of every coin you earn in his rooms. It's a black market contract so binding you could carve it into stone and still feel trapped. You slip into his establishment under the rickety sign that reads Pulvis et potio, dust and drink. Inside, the dust is real, but the drink is poison by comparison. Boiled down vinegar masquerading as wine, and bread so stale it could be used as a doorstop. Lucius greets you with a nod that feels more like a stone falling on your chest. You've been quiet these past nights, he rasps. Coin's been light. You place 3 silver denarii and a handful of bronze asses on the bar. He counts with lazy fingers, then frowns. Where's your usual for the herbalist? You swallow and explain the half-success of your self-administered potion and diplomatic immunity granted by the farmer's wife outside the walls. He leans in, breath rancid with cheap oregano. "You owe me more," he says, "twice what you gave me." You want to snap back, remind him that he's a parasite living off your misery, but you bite your tongue. So you promise your next 5 clients' first coins go to him. That vow is sealed with a grunt. You leave with a weight heavier than any purse of coins. Out on the street, your heart races. If you can't scrape together enough clients before the assistant shows up, Lucius will send muscle after you, slaves or gladiators in training, both as clueless as they are dangerous. The day's strategy forms like a battle plan. Pick only high-paying clients, avoid the magistrate's patrols, and keep Lucius's demands in mind. You head back toward the forum, eyes peeled for any sign of trouble. By mid-morning, the city has woken fully. Shoppers, street performers, rowdy schoolboys, and military recruits rough housing near the temple steps. You station yourself beneath an arch, shaded, out of the way, but still within earshot of potential customers. Without your usual perfumed armor, you rely on subtlety, a flash of bare shoulder, a tilt of the head, a languid smile. It's finesse honed by months of practice. A trio of Roman soldiers passes by, their red cloaks bright against the gray stone. You catch the eye of one, the youngest, barely 20, with wide eyes and calloused hands. He nudges his friend, they laugh and approach. Soldiers are notorious. They demand loyalty, they pay in promises, and sometimes they skip town without settling debts. But today you roll the dice. He offers you a couple of silver denarii, plus half a loaf of bread from their rations. You take it. Bread's good for staving off hunger if you can't afford bread and cheese. They lead you down a quieter alley. At the end stands a shuttered cart where a lecherous medic sells opiums and coverings for venereal sores. You sniff the air. Is that the smell of sweet almonds and laudanum? You pause, worry about ruined business if the client sees you sniffing out drugs rather than pleasure, but the soldier sees your hesitation. "Pain in my lower parts," he grunts. "Got a remedy?" Now you're in the role of a sidekick, medic's assistant. You slip behind the cart, nod at the vendor, and buy a small vial of salve. You dab some on his groin. He moans appreciatively. That act of kindness cements loyalty. He might pay double next time. Back in the alley's gloom, you take your coin purse and the salve. The soldiers leave you with a curt nod and limp off toward their barracks. You squat on the cobblestones and count coins. 4 silver denarii, 7 bronze asses. Not bad. Enough to satisfy Lucius's cut for today, if you're disciplined enough not to spend on wine or oil. You pocket the coins and head to the apothecary's workshop. Inside, it's a hell of jars and labels in Latin so flowery they might be intended to confuse. The crooked herbalist greets you with a smirk. "Back so soon?" She waves you forward. She's a short woman with wild hair, eyes bright as hawthorn berries. You hand over half your day's earnings, 2 denarii, 4 asses, and she gives you a new tincture, a dark green liquid that smells like nightshade and regret. She claims it prevents infection after special services. You nod, hope it works better than her fertility brew. You step out, adjusting your kerchief, and realize you're near the public baths again. The temptation to wash off yesterday's grime nags at you. Clean skin means confident sales pitch, means higher pay. But the baths also mean risk, catches of acquaintances, gossiping matrons, and magistrate scouts looking for illicit behavior. You weigh your options, a quick rinse or risking exposure. You choose to skip the baths. You'll have to pretend you showered in your room later. The afternoon sun bleeds brilliance onto the marble columns. You weave through crowds to the House of Vestals where Vestal virgins, those elite cushioned paragons of virtue, glide by like ghostly queens. They're untouchable, revered, practically deified. You see them glance at you with a mixture of contempt and pity. In their pristine white stolas, you imagine them condemning you silently. Shame on her. They have duty, honor, security. You have stones in your feet and a purse as light as a bird's egg. You duck into a shadow beneath a statue of Mars and wait. A city official approaches, pale, wan, carrying a ledger. He's known for his meticulous audits and his zeal for tax revenue. You freeze. If he spots you here, he might question why such a respectable man loiters beneath a war god's image, unless he's looking for someone's services. You force a neutral expression, avoid eye contact, and step aside when he reaches the statue. He jots something in his ledger and moves on. You exhale, realizing you've lived through another potential interrogation without a single lash. As the sun dips lower, the forum's energy shifts. Market stalls close, senators dismiss their debates, and the evening promenade begins. This is your prime time. Wealthy class mingling, dining tables calling for entertainment. You head toward the Mensa Ponderaria, where merchants and patrons gather over expensive feasts. You offer your services with an air of exclusivity, private engagement, discreet, no crowds. That hook works like a charm. Tonight's opportunity is a senator's son, arrogant, entitled, and flush with coin. He meets you behind a curtained archway in a private dining hall. The room smells of roast boar, garlands of herbs, and spilled wine. A servant locks the curtain behind you too. His coin pouch bulges with silver. You entertain him with whispered stories of gladiator scandals and temple prostitute gossip, because knowledge is as seductive as physical touch. He laughs, sprays wine in your hair, then insists on paying for a performance that lasts longer than usual. You handle it like a seasoned diplomat, playing roles and positions you've perfected over countless Roman nights. He tips you generously, 6 silver denarii and a promise to return many times. Emerging from the curtained booth, you feel richer than a plebeian banker. You tuck the coins away and think of Lucius's demands. 5 clients' first coins. Tonight's gift makes 1 count, only 4 to go. You slip out through the servants' exit to avoid prying eyes and head toward the Tiber's embankment. Along the river, you meet a small network of fellow prostitutes, a clandestine sisterhood bound by necessity and fear. They whisper about rumors, a new decree that pimps must register with the Edels or face public flogging, a potential crackdown on foreign sex workers blamed for importing diseases, new tests requiring vaginal inspections at public health stations. You look at these women, some young, some old, all worn, and you realize the stakes have never been higher. One woman, Marcella, shares what she paid for a secret medical pamphlet outlining early detection of syphilis. You pool your coins to buy a copy. It's written on papyrus in neat handwriting, detailing symptoms and rudimentary treatments, mercury rubs that leave skin raw, or bleeding techniques that might kill you faster than the disease. You debate whether it's worth the risk. Knowledge could save you, but if the magistrate finds the pamphlet, it's evidence you're collaborating in illicit health practices. You pocket a fragment of hope and tuck the rest away. Night deepens. You return to your room by the insula, smelling of sweat, wine, and herbs. Lucius's cut has 1 client paid, 4 to go. You lie down, tracing the coins in your pocket with trembling fingers. You're no closer to freedom, but you're surviving. That's the triumph. Living through absurdity, grotesque laws, and bodily indignities to count another sunrise. Tomorrow brings part 4, where the final battles await, dealing with health inspectors, confronting Lucius's wrath, and clawing for a future beyond the forum's glare. But for now, you close your eyes and let exhaustion claim you. Because in ancient Rome, rest is a brief gift on the battlefield of survival, and tomorrow, the fight begins anew. You wake to a pounding at the door, no gentle sunrise, just the rattling insistence of Lucius's thuggish messenger demanding your immediate presence. Your ribs throb where you slept on that lousy mattress, but there's no time for regrets. You yank on your plain tunic, knot your kerchief, and sling your purse over your shoulder. Outside, the corridor's shadows loom like prison bars. The messenger, a hulking slave with a crooked nose, spits. Boss says you're 2 payments behind. Today's his last mercy. You swallow bile and steel your face. Mercy in Lucius's world is as rare as a free gladiator. You follow him down the spiral stairs, stone steps slick with mildew and the sweat of 10,000 feet. At the bottom, Lucius waits under a swinging lantern that paints his gaunt features in macabre relief. He grins, showing the jagged edges where 2 teeth should be. I hear you've been busy, he croaks, but busy doesn't pay my rents. His bony hand reaches for your purse. Situation: if you hand over coins, you'll starve. If you fight, you'll lose. You flash him a smile sharper than any dagger. I've got tonight's earnings coming in. You lie. I need until dawn. He leans in, the stench of stale wine assaulting you. Dawn, he repeats, or the whip. He snaps his fingers. The messenger hefts a leather scourge and cracks it against a pillar for emphasis. You nod, mind already plotting extraction. Step 1. Find a high-paying client, and fast. You dash back up the stairs, heart pounding like a ceremony drum. At the top, you pause to catch breath and realize your oil stocks are gone. Your lungs still smell of bathhouse mold, and your muscles ache from days of contortions. But desperation can be an effective perfume. You fling open your door, adjust your tunic to show more skin than usual, and slip out into the pre-dawn gloom. The forum lies deserted, only a few guards patrolling the temple steps, yawning over the pomp of sunrise rituals. You skirt the gravestones of fallen senators, where stray dogs hunt for scraps. Ahead, a flicker of torchlight marks the entrance to a secretive alley known as the Emerald Vale. Here, rumor has it, elite patrons seek the most discreet pleasures and pay handsomely. You penetrate the alley's arch and emerge into a courtyard, ringed by private rooms. Lanterns hang from hooks, green glass lenses tinted to flatter skin. A single guard in ornate armor lounges by a brazier. You approach, feigning confidence. "I'm here for Aurelius," you whisper, naming a wealthy merchant known for his exotic tastes. The guard's eyes narrow. He studies your kerchief, your pale skin, then nods and waves you through. Inside, the room glows with silken draperies and scented burners. A low couch cushions scattered with cushions carved from imported ivory. Candles flank a bronze basin carved with Bacchus's likeness. You think, of course a merchant named after Bacchus would worship wine more than love. Across the room, a tall figure stands draped in a cloak of eastern silk. He reveals himself as Gaius Tedius, proprietor of the secretive club. "You're late." His voice is velvet poisoned with cynicism. You shrug, blinking at the coin purse he extends. "Traffic." He tosses you a leather bag dotted with silver studs. Your heart races. 3 silver denarii. "No 15. Your eyes widen. He smiles as if reading your mind. In here, time is measured in dreams, not minutes. He gestures to a narrow staircase leading down. Step 2. Perform flawlessly. You descend into a subterranean chamber where a small audience sits on plush cushions. Senators' sons, foreign dignitaries, a retired centurion showing off his scars. They watch you as though you're a spectacle in the Colosseum. The candles reflect in their eyes, dilating with anticipation. You center yourself, recalling every trick, every gesture learned through months of debt and disgrace. With a slow, mocking elegance, you move across the marbled floor, letting your tunic slide off one shoulder. A soft gasp ripples through the crowd. You plant one foot on the dais and arch your back, drawing laughter like a magnet. You whisper Titus's favorite Greek poem, butchered but charming, eliciting nods of approval. The performance crescendos in practiced motions, every thrust, every tilt of your hips precise, almost ritualistic. The audience murmurs, blinded by candlelight and indulgence. You count heartbeats, not seconds. 1, 2. You pace yourself to last long enough for 2 full payments. At the finale, you stagger back, feigning exhaustion as a soft flute melody plays from hidden pipes. The crowd rises, clapping. You bow, shimmering with sweat and triumph. Step 3. Double back to Lucius. You slip into the shadows, purse heavier than any you've borne. Hunger gnaws at your gut, but tonight you triumph over starvation. The messenger waits at the base of your insula stairs, arms crossed. You offer a confident smirk and drop 2 coins, your final required payment. The messenger snatches them and retreats. Lucius's whip stays coiled. You step back into your room, buttressed by 15 new denarii in your purse. You unlace sandals, revealing blistered heels that deserve laurels. You pace, mind whirring. 1. You clear the debt. 2. You restock oils. 3. You prepare for the Adile's health inspection rumored tomorrow. Your pulse throbs with survival adrenaline, but sleep eludes you. Instead, you confront reality head-on. The health inspectors, appointed by magistrates to protect public morals and safety, will sweep through the insula at dawn. They drag women into booths, inspect bodies for signs of disease, and publicly mark violators with red paint, ironclad proof of impurity. Then they impose fines or worse. Your survival plan must include avoidance. You rise with the next dawn's gray light and begin Operation Invisible Prostitute. First, you stash your oils and coin purse in a bucket under the bed, then hide them under your mat. Next, you wear your plainest tunic, dampened with water to mask any scent that might betray you, as a veteran of pleasure rather than a laundress. You braid your hair tight beneath a kerchief and apply only enough charcoal to appear like any other woman on her way to the market. You slip out into the courtyard, merging with laundry women carrying bundles of tunics. You head for the public latrines, the worst-smelling restroom in Rome, but a perfect cover. You pretend to squat alongside peasants and widows, eavesdropping on gossip about the upcoming inspection. The chatter runs. They'll start at the Sabura. Have they found the list of pimps yet? My cousin's friend was forced to flee with child. No mercy. You slip away from the latrines and duck into a stall. There, you scribble a note on a scrap of papyrus. Meet at the merchant district at noon. Bring salve. You hide the note in your kerchief, then cross the street toward the Tiber embankment, heart pounding. Today, you will join Marcella and the others in a counterattack, forging a network of safe houses to dodge inspectors. At noon, you reconvene at a discreet doorway behind a clam-tinned workshop. Marcella, her cheeks flushed with anxiety, greets you with a nod. "I've secured the East Alley," she whispers. "We'll slip through the sewers if needed." You glance at the papyrus pamphlet on syphilis detection. "We need to pool resources," you say. "Salves, powders, anything that can pass us off as laundry girls or beggars." The clandestine meeting yields a small stockpile of potions and herbs, pennyroyal for cramps, alabaster powder to lighten skin that shows scars, and even a few vials of laudanum to quiet screaming nerves during inspections. You distribute supplies, a denarius's worth per woman. The council feels fragile as a wisp, but momentum surges through your veins. For the first time, you're not just surviving, you're organizing. Suddenly, a distant shout echoes. "Inspectors!" You freeze. A squad of health guards marches down the street, led by an officious clerk clutching a scroll. You and the others scatter like roaches when the light flicks on. You dive into a doorway and wind through a warren of corridors until you emerge near the river. You keep low, hugging the walls until the squad passes by, scanning windows and doors. Their lanterns flicker over stone walls, mocking you with each heartbeat echoing in the alley. Once they vanish, you retreat to your insula and barricade your door. Inside, you catch your breath and count coins. 17 denarii, 12 asses. Enough for oil, food, and emergency exit bribe money if things go sideways. You prepare a quick meal, stale bread, goat cheese, and a swig of water. You coat your muscles with perfumed oil to mask fatigue. Each breath feels like a small victory. Evening comes and you face your final task, freeing yourself from Lucius's grip forever. Tomorrow you intend to pay him one last coin, declare your freedom, and vanish into the sprawling city. You've heard of distant provinces, Alexandria, Antioch, where a new face can disappear in the crowds. You dare to hope. But first you need Lucius's attention. You slip down at dusk and slide a coin under his door. Then you knock. Moments later, his messenger appears, scowling. He'll see you in the back room. You steel yourself and enter Pulvis et Potio's back chamber, a dank room smelling of vinegar and fear. Lucius lounges behind a small wooden table, a single candle illuminating his half-empty mouth. You place your final denarius on the table. "This clears my debt." You speak firmly, surprising even yourself. Lucius's smile falters. He leans forward, one eye gleaming. "You're free?" he asks. You nod. "I'm free." Silence stretches. Then he chuckles, low and menacing. "Freedom, like honor, is a luxury," he says. He rises, towering over you. "I could take it back." You meet his gaze. "You'd threaten a guest in your own chambers?" You draw in a breath. "I've earned every coin, every contract. We're done." He studies you, weighing profit against pride. Finally, he straightens. "Go," he growls. "But remember, debts of blood are harder to wash away than those of sesterces." With a guttural laugh, he dismisses you with a wave. You step outside into the night air, lungs filling with crisp freedom. For a moment, the city's distant bells sound like victory chimes. But you know true freedom in ancient Rome is an illusion. It can vanish with a toothless emperor's whim or a disgruntled magistrate's frown. Still, tonight you breathe freely. Back in your room, you pack your purse, 17 denarii, enough for a boat ticket to Ostia, the port city, and perhaps enough to bribe a sea captain for passage as a servant. You fold the papyrus pamphlet into your tunic pocket and brush your hair free of kerchief for the first time in weeks. You splash water on your face, savoring the fleeting warmth of purity before tomorrow's grime. You lie down, the moonlight slipping through your shutter to dance across your coins. You trace their edges one last time. Each coin tells a story: the bureaucrat's bribe, the farmer's wife's gratitude, the merchant's indulgence, the soldier's loyalty, and finally, your own cunning. They're not just metal, they're your path out. Sleep comes slowly. Your mind drifts to possibilities: Alexandria's spice markets, Antioch's theaters, perhaps even a small shop selling oils. Your old trade turned respectable. You imagine strolling through foreign streets, eyes not on your shoulders but out toward horizons. It feels absurd, daring, and terrifying. At the edge of dreams, you whisper a toast to the next chapter. The coins clink softly as if in agreement. In the vast, uncaring empire, one life can vanish like smoke or carve its own destiny. Tomorrow, you choose destiny. Part 4 ends here. Our heroine stands on the threshold of the unknown, clutching freedom in one hand and coins in the other. History's absurd nightmare continues, but for now, she has escaped its fiercest clutch. Dare we hope for a happy ending? In Rome, nothing is ever certain, except that survival demands wit sharper than any gladius and courage, fiercer than the desert sun. Imagine sending a love letter sealed with grape jelly, because wax would melt in the Colosseum sun, and then discovering your beloved has already run off with a centurion's pet monkey. Welcome to ancient Roman romance. Heartbeats racing, you lean in. Did she really carve your name into her lover's shield? Was that gladiator's promise of eternal devotion followed up with a stab in the back? Literally? Today, we're peeling back the togas and diving mouth first into the absurd, messy, and surprisingly cutthroat world of love affairs in ancient Rome. The sun hasn't yet scorched the marble when you're slipping into your lover's villa. Eyes darting for guards, chariots, or jealous husbands. Your sandals slip on mosaic floors, revealing you've traded discretion for decorative brilliance. But hey, nothing says illicit passion like scuffing a masterpiece underfoot. Once inside, you pause in the atrium, heart pounding like trumpets at a gladiator's entrance. Your lover, let's call him Gaius, is smitten, or so you hope. He greets you with a perfunctory peck on the cheek, then ushers you into the peristyle garden, where orange trees sigh and fountains gossip. Here's where the real fun begins. Courtship in Rome isn't whispered sweet nothings over candlelight. No, it's more akin to a political summit with emotional landmines. Gaius flings a laurel wreath at your feet, a symbol of victory, but also a passive-aggressive hint that he regards this rendezvous as conquest. You pluck a leaf and place it atop his head. Retaliation is your love language. Then he produces a scroll, his love poem, no less. But it's written in legalese. Whereas the undersigned holds a fondness for the above-named party, let it be known. You choke on laughter because even romance in Rome reads like Senate minutes. Negotiations commence. You demand proper compensation for your affections, preferably in silver denarii or jars of imported honey. He counters with promises of public acknowledgement and a modest dowry promise to your family. Dowry promises are like modern Kickstarter goals, often postponed or quietly canceled. You sigh, scribble an amendment onto the scroll, 5 extra jars of honey, and hand it back. He signs with a dramatic flourish, and you seal the deal with a kiss that tastes faintly of olive oil. Transaction complete. But wait, this is just the flirting phase. Once you're official, the cruelty of Roman love shows its true face. Gaius insists you attend his dinner party among senators' wives and gladiators on leave. You show up in your best stola, trying not to look like a peacock in a room of doves. The hostess eyes you like leftover fish sauce, wondering exactly what street corner you sprang from. You sidle past drunks debating the merits of goat brains and stuffed dormice, and find a seat on a bench carved from volcanic rock. Romance note: rock benches are notoriously unsupportive of tender embraces. Dinner begins with appetizers, oysters so fresh they still gurgle, dormice stuffed with pork, and a dish of boiled ostrich tongue. because nothing says, I adore you, like exotic awful. You try to nibble politely while Gaius whispers sonnets in your ear, but the conversation turns to politics. Senators bicker about tax reform, grain supplies, and that scandal involving the governor's missing sandals. You smile, nod, and wonder if love in Rome is just another distraction from civic boredom. Finally, the main course arrives: roasted boar, crispy on the outside, chewy like a philosophical treatise on suffering. You share a forkful, literal fork not in wide use, so more like a sharpened twig, with Gaius and whisper, nothing tastes as bittersweet as your compliments. He laughs, slaps your knee, and promptly drops the boar, sending it sliding across the table, into the lap of a dignified matron. Q gasps and tut-tuts. Once the feast concludes, it's time for music and poetry recitals. Gaius arranged for a flautist and a lyre player, two slaves who play so off-key you curse the day someone invented string instruments. You join the singing, oh sweet moonlight, caressing my bones like a cat. Admittedly, it's hard to keep a straight face when your chest hurts from trying not to laugh, but romance demands solemnity, so you deliver your lines with all the gravitas of a toga-clad opera star. The crowd applauds politely. Few clap, most stare at your lips as if they'd never before seen such audacious movement. At midnight, the party disperses. Gaius offers you an escort home in his litter, two slaves carrying a wooden box on their shoulders, swaying like a drunken centaur. Litter rides are luxurious, unless your companion snores or farts mid-journey. Tonight, Gaius snores. You grit your teeth, clutch the cushions, and count your fortunes. At least you didn't pay extra for scented oils. The litter reeks of sweat and garlic. Back in your apartment, you find messages carved on your door. Move on, and I'm over you. Both from Gaius, which feels oddly efficient. He's breaking up with you via graffiti, Rome's version of a text. Immediate, public, and impossible to ignore. You read the messages by torchlight, lips twisting into a smile of pure sarcasm. You draft your own reply. See you at the next Senate hearing, sealing it with a kick to the door that makes your sandal sole tear. Satisfaction achieved. Day 2 of your love affair dawns with gossip. Your neighbor, a matron named Livia, corners you in the latrine corridor. Did you hear about Gaius's new flame? She cackles. Someone from the silk trader's stall, fancy tunics, imported shawls. You feign shock, then produce the graffiti draft from under your mattress. I'm reading his love declarations backward, you say. Her eyes widen. Drama note, matrons love scandal more than dates. You decide to reclaim your narrative. You compose a poem on a piece of papyrus, lampooning Gaius's fickleness, and deliver it to his doorstep. It begins. Your love, like a fig in winter, rots before I taste its sweetness. You seal it with a smear of honey and a drop of goat's blood. Dramatic flair adds insurance that he reads it. While you wait for his reaction, you slip into the forum to watch the Senate convene, a favorite pastime when your love life needs perspective. You stand among togaed men arguing grain prices and recall, love in Rome is taxed, regulated, and occasionally flogged, just like merchandise. Afternoon brings a twist. Your old flame, Marcus, a legionary on leave, spots you across the basilica. He waves his sword hilt at you. No, he's actually calling your name, but it looks dramatic. He dashes over, helmet under arm, smelling of campfire and regret. Why didn't I see you first? He pants. He offers you a single glass bead, soldiers' keepsakes for sweethearts. It's small but precious. You raise an eyebrow. Bead. Bead note. Size doesn't matter, symbolism does. Marcus suggests a picnic by the Tiber, couching softly on linen beneath willow trees. You agree, partly to spite Gaius and partly to test legionary romance. You pack bread, olives, and those weird honey-candied nuts that stick to your teeth. Under the willow's shade, you lean against Marcus, who insists on reciting poetry he learned from a camp philosopher. It goes, between the scars of war and the wounds of love, neither heals alone. He pauses, looking at you with solemn eyes. You take a bite of olive, wince at the pit, and say, "Please continue." He laughs, scrapes his teeth with his tongue, and launches into a parody of a battle hymn. Suddenly, your picnic is a comedy show. As the sun dips low, you realize that Roman love affairs are part tragedy, part farce, and part investment portfolio. calculated, hedged, and often traded before harvest. You bid Marcus farewell with a kiss on his leathery wrist and head home, coins jingling in your purse. Evening finds you drafting a letter to your future self. Dear Madame of a private villa, I hope your nights are free of snoring aristocrats. You wrap the letter around a pebble, planning to drop it into the Tiber like a romantic message in a bottle. If only the river weren't used as open sewers. You toss the pebble anyway, imagining it bobbing past floating togas and city refuse, carrying your message to a more merciful century. Night falls, and you collapse onto your mattress, tunic wrinkled, hair tangled, heart racing from laughter and sorrow. You count the day, Gaia's conquest, Marcus's campfire charm, Livia's gossip, and your own poetic vengeance. The ledger of emotions is in the red, but your spirit is richer for the absurdity. Tomorrow, Part 2 promises to expose the darker side, secret affairs in shadowy villas, the legal perils of adultery, and how even the gods couldn't save a love affair that outran its welcome. Rest well, because surviving Roman romance requires more than passion. It demands wit sharper than a senator's tongue and skin tougher than a legionnaire's shield. You slip out of your apartment before dawn, the sky still bruised purple with the memory of night. Part 2 begins in the half-light of the Subura district, where narrow alleys twist like gossip and courtyards hide more secrets than the Vestal Virgin's temple vault. You've heard that true Roman grands liaisons happen not in public gardens, but in secret villas beyond the city walls. Vine-draped retreat houses owned by senators and freedmen with more money than shame. Today, you're on a mission. Infiltrate one of these villas, witness the clandestine trysts, and maybe, just maybe, score an invitation of your own. Your first stop is the barber's shop, a cramped room stinking of bloodletting and lavender oil. You trade a silver denarius for a quick shave and a scalp massage so vigorous it nearly knocks you unconscious. You emerge with a clean face, hair trimmed to military regulation, and a fresh wound on your temple that lends you a roguish charm. You wrap your tunic tighter, knot your belt, and tie your hair in a neat bun. Presentation matters, even in espionage. Next, you navigate the Forum Boreum, Rome's cattle market and political rumor mill. Farmers haggle over livestock, while senators sneak off to buy bribes in the form of oxen. You slip through a side gate, past the statue of Hercules, and approach a discreet doorway marked only by a carved lion's head. A slave in a linen tunic eyes you suspiciously. He doesn't ask your name, he asks your price. You flash a confident smile and murmur, "I'm here for Lucilla's party." The slave nods, his expression unreadable, and slips inside. You follow him through a dim corridor into an elegant courtyard, tiled with marble mosaics depicting cupids chasing butterflies. Ironic decor for an affair built on secrecy. At the far end, a low portico leads into a Paris-style garden, where fig trees grown with fruit and fountains whisper promises of pleasure. Chandeliers hang from olive branches, each candle flickering like a conspirator's wink. Lucilla greets you with exaggerated warmth, her gown so tight it could double as armor. She's married to a provincial governor. He's away, so her villa doubles as a safe house for bored aristocrats seeking more than philosophical debates. She sweeps you into her arms. "Welcome, darling." You're just in time. You press a perfumed kiss to her cheek and sniff the air. Rose oil, stale wine, and the faint tang of illicit excitement. Personal note, roses are lovely, but they make your nose itch. Inside, the party churns. Senators' wives draped in black silk giggle like schoolgirls as they nibble on pomegranate seeds. Their husbands lurk in shadowed niches, clutching goblets of Falernian wine and trading smirks. You mingle, offering compliments so syrupy they slide off your tongue and stick to the air. You ask after husbands, dowries, and that ominous rumor about corroded marriage contracts. One matron hisses, "If you want to keep your reputation, speak softly. Beware the Aedile's spies." You tuck that advice into your memory and head for the center of the garden. There you find your target, Titus Sabinus, a silver-haired oracle of conquest whose toga drips with gold embroidery. His reputation? Legendary. His taste? Expensive. And tonight he's in the mood for novelty. You approach under the guise of offering him a fresh fig, plucked from Lucilla's own grove. He takes it from your hand, eyelashes fluttering as the juice dribbles down his chin. You catch his gaze, arch an eyebrow, and ask, "Do you prefer your fruits ripe or your company?" He laughs, a sound like bronze coins clinking together, and gestures for you to follow him into a shadowed alcove. Inside the alcove, the air is cooler, scented with jasmine and secrecy. A mosaic of Neptune stares down at you, disapproving of your dalliance, yet too busy holding his trident to intervene. Titus draws you close, his breath warm with wine and power. He compliments your wit, your grace, your unspoken understanding of political danger. He leans in to kiss you, soft at first, then urgent as if time itself might expose you. You feel the press of his hand at your waist, the tug of his toga, the promise that one affair here could open doors to every villa in the empire. But there's always a twist. From the far corner comes the sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, accusing. Titus stiffens. You turn to see Lucilla herself, slender as a column, torch in hand. Her lips curve into a practiced smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Enjoying the hospitality?" she purrs. Surprise ripples through you. This was never part of the plan. Titus drops your hand, blinking. Lucilla's voice lowers. "I'm generous, but not a fool." She steps forward, torchlight dancing on her polished nails. Your pulse hammers against your ribs, caught between two powerful women in Rome, neither of whom shrinks from violence or scandal. You bow your head, wondering if this is how the great Empress Agrippina felt when Nero's mother caught her in the atrium. Lucilla sighs and pinches Titus's cheek. "You owe me one, darling. Tonight I'll let you off with a warning." She eyes you and tilts her head. "And you, my dear, are quite the resourceful one. Fetch me 3 figs and a flask of that special wine I admired, and we'll call this a mutual favor." She hands you a small token of pressed gold leaf, a coin stamped with her family crest. Present this to her steward. It's your entry fee to tonight's dinner. Then, without waiting for your reaction, she glides away, leaving you holding the torch in a lungful of panic. Step 1 of your improvised plan, secure the figs. You dart back into the courtyard, grabbing 3 bloated purple fruits that gleam like theater masks. You pop them into your bosom. Next, find the wine. You trace the scent to a low table laden with earthenware jugs. You lift a flask marked with a stylized hippocampus, Lucilla's private vintage, and cradle it like a teddy bear. You duck back into the alcove, panting and triumphant, and present your offerings. Lucilla surveys your hall and nods, approving your speed. She motions you to follow her through another corridor into a private dining room. Inside, the table is set for 15. Silver plates, ivory spoons, and crystal goblets carved with the faces of Bacchus's bacchanalian followers. Candles drip wax like tears. Before you can sit, Lucilla stands before a carved wooden chest, lowers its lid, and retrieves a scroll sealed in red wax. "This," she whispers, passing it to you, "is the guest list for next month's symposium on erotic poetry. I want you on it." You take the scroll, heart pounding. A genuine invitation, status you never imagined. Your eyes flick to her face. "In return," she adds, "you'll keep Titus's secret, and mine." You feel the weight of her words. Loyalty in Rome is currency more valuable than gold. You slip the scroll into your belt and pull out your own token of payment, a promise of discreet rumors that will bolster her reputation when she needs popular support. She accepts it with a knowing nod. The alliance is sealed. Dinner follows, courses of peacock, quail eggs nested in honey, and a stew so rich with spices from the east it almost combusts under your tongue. As you eat, senators' wives lean in to trade gossip on Lucilla's rise in the governor's court, praising her for restoring decorum and subtle influence. You sip wine, listening, learning how power operates behind silken fans and trimmed hedges. You realize that love affairs in Rome are less about passion and more about alliances. Who can win favor, forge connections, and secure your future when the empire shifts beneath your feet. After the meal, music drifts in from the portico, a harpist and a chorus of trained nightingales. Lucilla beckons you to the head of the table, placing you beside her. She raises her goblet. "To new friendships and advantageous liaisons," she toasts. The room echoes with clinking. You raise your goblet, feeling the hum of ambition in your blood. Somewhere between the sugar-dusted pastry and the final sip of wine, you understand, survival in ancient Rome means mastering the art of love as much as the art of war. The party dissolves around you. You gather your things, the invitation scroll, a small handbag of leftover figs, and a vial of Lucilla's signature rose oil. You slip away through the gardens, past fountains shaped like tritons, and out into the dawn-chilled corridor, where slaves are already sweeping away petals. As you step back onto the crowded streets, the city yawns awake. Vendors hauling bread, porters heaving wine amphorae, magistrates swearing in new laws. You realize you've just completed your first true espionage mission into the world of elite Roman romance. You've danced with a senator, bargained with a hostess, and earned a seat at a symposium. You check your tunic pocket, still warm from the token coin Lucilla gave you, and feel its reassuring weight. Later, in the privacy of your own room, you lay out the scroll on your small wooden table and trace the handwriting of the guest list. Cicero's niece, a playwright, a Greek rhetorician, a famous flute virtuoso, and your own name at the bottom. You imagine walking into that symposium, all eyes on you as you recite your own witty epigrams. Your pulse quickens at the possibility to influence great minds with a well-placed couplet or a scandalous anecdote. You pour what remains of your rose oil into a chipped basin, add water, and bathe away the dust of city roads. As you dress in a fresh tunic, you reflect on the absurdity you witnessed. Torchlit seductions, secret tokens, power plays disguised as romantic dalliance. You pour yourself a small cup of wine, leftover, tinted pink by rose petals, and raise it to the empty room. To part 3, you murmur, the liquid warming your chest. May the villa walls hold more secrets, and may my pen be sharper than any senator's decree. You slip into bed, lulled by the distant clang of the morning bell. Tomorrow you'll prepare your finest stola, practice your recitations, and plan the perfect entrance to Lucilla's symposium. Love affairs in ancient Rome may look like glittering tragedies, but you're now armed with knowledge, cunning, and a genuine invitation. You drift into dreams of marble halls and hushed applause, ready to write the next chapter in your absurd, sarcastic, and painfully entertaining journey through history's greatest nightmare. Part 3 opens in the waning light of a late summer evening, when the air still clings with heat and scandal simmers like garum on a brazier. You've secured your invitation to Lucilla's symposium. Now comes the hard part, surviving the political minefield disguised as a love-laced literary salon. You rise before dawn and stand at your window, gazing at roofs tiled in red clay. The city hums below, bakers hauling loaves, laundrywomen shouting over amphora-laden carts, magistrates in togas already lecturing the crowd. You dress in your finest stola, a pale lavender hue, trimmed with a narrow band of embroidered laurel leaves, a subtle nod to both poetry and power. Beneath it, you fasten a small belt pouch containing the essential survival kit, a scrap of papyrus for impromptu notes, a vial of rose oil to mask city stink, a folded scrap of Lucilla's guest list in case you need proof of entry, and a thin, bronze hairpin sharpened to double as a defensive dagger. Before leaving, you pause at the brazier in your courtyard. You scoop up a handful of ash from yesterday's discarded offerings and smear your cheeks. Ashes as camouflage, an ancient trick to appear less polished and more one of the servants. You let a few stray curls fall around your face to soften the effect. Skilled hosts value informality in intimate gatherings. Stepping out, you hail a litter near the Temple of Venus, a small private carrier reserved for society's rising stars. The bearers recognize Lucilla's seal and hoist you aloft. The gentle sway soothes your nerves, and you close your eyes for brief respite. Only the muffled clang of sandals on stone reminds you that in Rome, even rest comes with rhythm. The villa lies on the Pincian Hill, beyond the bustle of the urban sprawl. Olive groves enfold its walls, and a line of statues greets you, Venus, Mars, and unknown deities with eroded faces. The bearer lowers you at the threshold, and you straighten your stola, plaster a serene smile on your face, and step inside. The entrance hall gleams with marble inlays depicting love scenes, Eros ambushing harried mortals, Venus rising from foamy seas. A flautist plays a mournful tune in a distant niche. The notes drift like incense. You pause to admire a mosaic of a great poet you barely recognize. Likely one of the symposium's featured luminaries, Lucilla emerges, radiant in a silk gown the color of crushed pomegranate seeds. Her smile is genuine, the kind that dazzles and blinds at once. She directs you by name to the inner salon, where the other guests are gathering. You pause to register faces, a Greek rhetorician with a reputation for scandalous speeches, a theater star whose tragic roles have inspired real-life suicides, and a foreign ambassador whose exotic perfumes betray his distant homeland. You realize your heart is pounding not from fear of discovery, but from the sheer electric buzz of elite company. Lucilla waves and ushers you to a plush cushion on a raised dais. A scribe waits beside you, ready to note your comments for the symposium's later publication. You settle in, opening your scroll of epigrams. Before speeches begin, servers circulate garlands of violets and dishes of spiced figs. You pluck one, savoring the sweetness. Food always tastes divine when danger lurks nearby. The first speaker is the Greek rhetorician. He launches into an oration on the power of words to inflame desire. The syllable is a caress, the sentence an embrace. He drives his point home by quoting a scandalous poem attributed to Sappho, reading it aloud with such fervor that even the stoic ambassador blushes. You note the reaction in your scrap of papyrus. This little detail could earn you favor with the scribe and a mention in the symposium's final verses. Next, the theater star stands. He tells a tale of forbidden love between a Vestal virgin and a gladiator, an obvious allegory for Lucilla's own discreet affair with the provincial governor. He ends with a dramatic flourish, collapsing backward as if dead, drawing applause and sympathetic sighs. You scribble another note. Use melodrama sparingly, too much and the heart grows callous. By mid-afternoon, after 3 more speeches, the floor opens to discussion. Lucilla beckons you forward. Your stomach twinges, but this is why you came. Clearing your throat, you recite your carefully crafted epigram. In marble halls where whispers crawl, hearts cavort in courtly thrall, yet love, unbound by law or pride, finds its pulse where souls collide. Murmurs ripple through the room. The Greek rhetorician nods approvingly. The ambassador raises his cup. Lucilla beams. A chorus of laughter and applause breaks out. Your first taste of true recognition among Rome's intellectual elite. The mood loosens into convivial chatter. You drift through clusters of guests, offering to read their verses aloud, critiquing with gentle wit, and extracting compliments in return. A senator's niece seeks your opinion on a stanza she adores. You deflect praise onto her choice of meter, securing her good graces. A visiting poet slips you a note praising your epigram's authentic insight into the Roman heart. You tuck the note into your belt, a trophy of verbal sparring. But the symposium is not merely literary, it's a breeding ground for alliances. You encounter a wealthy patron seeking a writer to craft laudatory verses for his daughter's upcoming betrothal. He eyes you thoughtfully and offers a contract, 3 gold auri for a celebratory ode. You hesitate only a heartbeat before sealing the deal. Gold in ancient Rome feels like sunlight made solid. The final event is a dramatic recitation by Lucilla herself. She stands in the alcove, torchlight dancing on her gilded hair, and reads a passionate ode to her absent husband, thinly veiled protest against his infidelities. The irony is as thick as honeyed wine. You watch each word land, sparking gasps and sympathetic sighs. Lucilla's performance cements her status as both hostess and star, a masterstroke of self-promotion. As the sun dips low, servants unroll carpets and bring forth silver platters of sweet pastries, candied almonds, and cups of chilled wine spiked with peppercorns. The guests recline on cushions, eyes half-lidded with contentment. You help yourself to a pastry dipped in rosewater, savoring its delicate crunch, and listen to hushed gossip about upcoming political intrigues, senatorial elections, rumored assassinations, and the emperor's latest decree barring foreign ambassadors. From private salons, you sense the symposium's conclusion approaching. Lucilla stands again, raising her goblet. To the art of love in all its guises, as passion, as strategy, and as survival. Glasses rise, clinking like tiny omens. You drink, feeling the burn of wine and the thrill of being part of something far larger than yourself. As guests begin to drift away, some to secret assignations in shadowed gardens, others to the city's night markets, you slip out through a side corridor, clutching your scrolls, notes, and that precious contract. Outside, the pinch and breeze chills your neck. Lantern bearers guide litter bearers as you retrace your steps back toward the city. Once home, you unpack your spoils. Lucilla's invitation, now scribbled with marginalia, the ambassador's note of praise, and gold coins heavy enough to alter your future. You light a single candle, lay out your papyri, and begin drafting your own collection of epigrams from the Pynchon Symposium, determined to parlay this triumph into lasting recognition. You pause and trace your hand over the stola's lavender folds, remembering the ash you used for disguise, proof that even the lowliest can rise if they know how to mask themselves and seize the right moment. You finish the night by penning your introduction, a biting preface on how love affairs in Rome are less about hearts and more about headlines. As you finally lay your head on your pillow, the city's distant torches flicker like stars fallen to earth. Part 3 closes with you, a survivor and architect of your own destiny, poised to transform whispered rumors into written legacy, and ready to face Part 4, where the ultimate test awaits, turning social capital into political clout, all while keeping your wit and your heart intact. The dawn's chill finds you hunched over your table, stacks of papyrus strewn like fallen gladiators, quill in hand. Part 4 begins not with roses or whispered sonnets, but with the weight of precedent pressing on your shoulders. Your epigrams from the Pynchon Symposium have begun circulating in the Forum, read aloud by street criers for a denarius per earful. Some call you a genius, others a blasphemer flirting with scandal. Today, you face the true aftermath of ancient Roman love affairs, the legal pitfalls, the reputational minefields, and the bitter reckoning when passion turns to peril. First order of business, check the magistrate's notice board. At the rostra, a new edict glints in the morning sun. Adultery and slander prohibitions, decree of the aediles. Any poet or pamphleteer found libeling a Roman matron or nobleman faces public flogging and confiscation of scrolls. Your heart skips. Your preface skewered a senator's wife, her silken stola reeked of perfumed hypocrisy, and that foreign ambassador's nephew, a man who wore more perfume than virtue. You note the fine print. Anonymous accusations are still punishable. Time to vanish your guilt under layers of legalese. You hustle to the tabularium, rubbing ash from yesterday's camouflage off your cheeks, though your lavender stola still bears a faint gray smudge, a rebellious battle scar. Inside the archives, the clerk welcomes you with a bored yawn. You request permission to purchase a certificate of official patronage, a form that grants limited immunity to writers under the aegis of a senator or high priest. It costs 12 denarii and a promise to dedicate your next work to the city's welfare. You pay with reluctance. 12 denarii could buy a month's worth of scented oils, and depart with your pardon-like scroll. Now you must secure a patron. You recall the wealthy arts patron Gellius Rufus, known for collecting scandalous writings as though they were exotic fish. You slip into his villa near the Capitol, mosaic floors gleaming under oil lamps, and kneel before his marble bust. He emerges, toga askew, spectacles perched on his nose. A poetess in lavender, how novel, he teases. You present your fawning dedication to Gellius Rufus, whose wisdom turns scandal into civic insight. He strokes his chin. Very well, I'll certify you, on 2 conditions. Erase that line about my nephew, and compose an ode in my honor. You nod eagerly, vowing to sacrifice the offending epigram, and produce 12 elegiac couplets by week's end. With patronage secured, you return home to revise your collection. You cross out lines, fold papyri, and flip scrolls until your desk looks like the ruins of Troy. Each amendment feels like erasing a part of yourself, but the prize, legal protection, and your reputation intact is worth the loss. By nightfall, your scrolls gleam anew, dedicated to Gellius and cleansed of venomous jabs, but the law is only one foe. Reputation is another battlefield. Word in the baths is that the ambassador's nephew confronted you yesterday, demanding to know why you called him a perfumed peacock with no spine. He posted guards outside the eastern gate to snatch you for a duel of honor, or worse, to drag you. Before the public assembly, you weigh your options: fight a duel as a woman, illegal and suicidal, or bribe the guards. You choose bribery. 2 silver denarii slipped into a guard's hand can buy a hold in the shadows. Under a slate-gray sky, you head to the eastern gate. A pair of heavily armed vigils barring the path eye your stola. You dip into courtesy. Good sirs, word from the Senate is that I'm requested as a witness to poetry readings in the Imperial Library. One guard narrows his eyes, the other rubs his palm. You press 2 denarii into the open palm. The hand closes around them as the path opens. Victory disguised as civic duty. Your next challenge: the senator's wife you lampooned at the symposium. She's influential, her husband sits on the consular bench, and her social network rivals any spider's web. Rumor says she's planning a ladies' literary salon to outshine Lucella's symposium, and you're clearly not invited. Worse, she's hired scribes to compile defamatory verses of the lavender poetess for her private circle. You must strike back strategically. At twilight, you don your plainest tunic and slip into the Sabura district under the guise of a lute seller. You carry a single instrument, a small lyre you found in an abandoned tomb, and take advantage of the brawl outside a winehouse to peddle your wares. A tip from a fellow street musician points you to the senator's wife's nephew, a young man in love with lyric poetry. You corner him, offer to teach him a new love song, and spend a half hour crafting lines about the virtues of his aunt. Her stola weaves sunlight into dignity. He's delighted, invites you to the salon as a poetry instructor, and offers a token of introduction. You pocket the ticket, a rare invitation to the enemy's stronghold. Now the final gambit. Attend the salon, charm the matron, and deflect her wrath. The evening arrives. You wrap a simple cloak over your lavender stola, merging your marks of ambition and discretion, then step into the senator's wife's opulent salon. Walls draped in dyed tapestry, marble busts of ancestors, silver braziers burning laurel smoke. The hostess greets you with a tilt of her head, a polite but calculating smile. You deliver your prearranged compliment to her nephew, reciting your simple love song. The boy beams, the aunt's smile softens. Throughout the evening, you recite gentle verses praising friendship, loyalty, and graceful aging, steering clear of satire. The matron nods approvingly, evidently softened by your tact. You manage to avoid the charged air of accusation. As the salon dissolves into whispered gossip, she approaches you. You brace for a rebuke, but instead she offers a cup of Molsum, honeyed wine, and says, "Your compliments speak louder than your satire. I commend you." In your heart, you file away this highest of grudges transformed into tolerance. You depart under moonlight, senses alive with triumph. You check your pouch. The senator's nephew slipped you a token, a small carved cameo with his aunt's profile, an emblem you tuck into your belt like proof of conquest. Rivalries averted, legal perils dodged, reputations managed, your final part of the saga. At home, you light a single lamp and prepare your closing commentary for the epigrams collection. You write an addendum, a cautionary note on the perils of mixing love, law, and literature in ancient Rome. You draft stanzas on prudence. Beware the tongue that bites in jest, lest offended hearts demand protest. Invite the lady, pacify the lord, or face the senate with your sword. Satisfied, you close your scroll and seal it with Gellius's emblem, your patron's shield against any future storms. You lean back, tracing the lines of ink, and reflect on the absurdity that has carried you through 4 parts of love's cruel ballet, from clandestine liaisons and poetic symposiums to duels of words and social subterfuge. As the final torch flickers, you whisper to the empty room, "In Rome, love is currency, scandal a commodity, and survival a performance." The city outside slumbers, oblivious to the battles waged in marble halls and whispered corridors. Your journey ends here. More than voyeuristic insight into ancient Roman affairs, you've lived through the nightmare. You've flirted with power, written your name in ashen ink, and bartered your wits for freedom. You've seen that hearts can be as sharp as daggers and words as binding as chains. So, as you extinguish the lamp and drift toward reluctant sleep, remember, the next generation of poets will envy your legacy, the future scribes will cite your epigrams, and somewhere, in the grand ledger of history, your name will linger, etched, and in satire, scandal, and survival. Good night, Romans. May your togas stay unbloodied, your scrolls unburned, and your love affairs ever entertaining. Imagine sipping a steaming mug of crushed beetles and rose petals, because that's the secret to making someone fall head over heels. Right before your face starts itching, your vision blurs, and you're convinced you've summoned a love demon instead of Romeo. Welcome to the glorious world of historical love potions. Daylight breaks over the bustling market square, and you clutch your mortar and pestle like a gladiator gripping a gladius. Your mission? To brew the perfect love potion, one that actually works, won't kill you, and won't have you hawking up black bile in the gutter. First task, gather ingredients without drawing the attention of the local magistrate, who frowns on public displays of magic, or anyone who can see through his toga. You sling your satchel over your shoulder and head for the herb stalls. Here, every merchant claims to sell the legendary Ars Amatoria elixir, though no two recipes agree whether it involves mandrake root, ground bat wings, or the tears of a heartbroken maiden. You sidle up to an old crone named Madalena, whose gnarled fingers resemble the twisted roots she petals. 1 drachma for mandrake dust, she croaks. 2 if you want it harvested under a full moon. You haggle her down to 1.5. Your survival depends on every lepton. Next stop, the apothecary's shadowy back room, where aromas swirl like a witch's cauldron, jasmine, frankincense, and something undeniably resembling goat excrement. The apothecary, clutching a vial of true heart's desire, warns you, drink too much and you'll see visions of your crush riding a dragon, or worse, you'll hallucinate their scowl every time they ignore you. You swallow hard and pay the silver, denarius. That's 2 days' wages, but hey, love is priceless, or so you tell your landlord. With ingredients secured, rose petals, mandrake dust, a pinch of crushed pearls, and a drop of your own morning urine, because ancient manuals insist it binds intent, you retreat to your tiny workshop. It's a cramped attic room with a low ceiling and one tiny window that refuses to close, letting in pigeons and cold drafts. You set up your heating brazier, the black iron glowing red like a dying ember, and arrange bowls of powders and petals on the rough-hewn table. Step 1. Infuse the petals with lunar energy. You chant an unintelligible rhyme, probably gibberish, but it sounds dramatic, and let the petals steep in cold water overnight. By morning, the water is a murky pink, smelling faintly of expiration. You filter it through cheesecloth, discarding the soggy petals that look like the remains of a failed love affair. Step 2. Grind your mandrake dust with the pestle. A single slip can bruise your hand and possibly kill you if you inhale enough. You snort the aroma and nearly pass out, vision blurring as if you're falling through clouds. You choke back dizziness and force yourself to continue. Unsure whether you're conjuring Cupid or a curse, you mix the dust into the petal infusion. Step 3. Add crushed pearls for refinement of connection, according to that scribbled papyrus you bought from a roadside scholar. Pearls are expensive, heavy, and glitter like the false promises in romance novels. Each pinch costs you half a denarius, but you're committed. You stir until the liquid glimmers under the flickering brazier light, like rose water infused with moonbeams. Now, the moment of truth, your love potion is ready. You decant it into a small crystal vial. If it shatters, you'll be down the cost of the ingredients plus the vial. With trembling fingers, you pry open the cork and sniff. It smells faintly of flowers, dust, and desperation. You brace yourself and take a sip. Instantly, your tongue feels numb. Warmth spreads through your limbs, and your heart hammers as though you've just outrun a saber-toothed tiger. For a terrifying minute, you imagine your crush's face glowing above you, eyes locked in eternal devotion, until you realize you've sneezed mid-vision and sprayed potion onto the brazier, causing a small flare-up. You jump back, singeing your tunic, and the vial slips from your fingers, smashing into the dirt floor. The potion seeps into the cracks like a wounded creature escaping. Coughing and half-blinded by smoke, you stagger outside. The world tilts. At the baker's stall, you swear the baker's apprentice is staring at you with newfound longing. You wave shakily, and he trips over his own feet, dropping a tray of honey cakes. You apologize profusely, half from genuine concern, half because you're convinced you've bewitched him. The magistrate's guard watches you from a distance, brow raised. You scramble away, vowing never to brew on an empty stomach again. Later that day, you spot your crush, let's call her Aurelia, across the plaza. You clutch your empty vial and approach, breath trembling. "Aurelia," you manage, voice thick. "Will you join me for a walk by the Tiber?" She looks at you puzzled, then at your ratty tunic and soot-streaked face. She declines politely, citing urgent errands. You nod, forcing a smile, convinced the potion's roast beetle undertone put her off. Undeterred, you retreat to the library, thumbing through dusty volumes on love charms. You learn of the philosopher's knot, a bracelet woven from a lover's hair, rumored to bind souls forever. You ask Aurelia for a lock of her hair under the guise of studying botanical dye recipes. She obliges. Women in Rome love sharing their beauty secrets, handing you a strand so fine it slips through your fingers like regret. You weave it into a crude bracelet, chanting monotonous Latin phrases that sound like tax regulations. You bind the bracelet on your wrist, hoping its power radiates outward when you offer it to Aurelia. You present it with a flourish, for you to tie your heart to mine. She admires its craftsmanship, though it looks more like a mouse chew toy, and returns it with a gracious nod. "Thank you," she says, tucking it into her pouch. You watch her walk away, heart sinking as though you've read the epitaph on your love's grave. Desperate, you consult a traveling soothsayer camped on the city outskirts, Melchior the Moon Reader, who claims to divine love's secrets in goat liver. For a handful of coins, he instructs you to draw a heart in the liver's folds under moonlight. You purchase a small liver, still warm, and attempt the ritual in a field under a sliver of moon. You carve a heart shape, whispering sweet distortions of Aurelia's name. Suddenly, a stray dog appears, snatches the liver, and vanishes into the night. You howl in frustration at the empty field, realizing you're running out of options and dignity. Returning home at dawn, you collapse on your cot, ingredients scattered around you like the remains of broken promises. You vow to try one last remedy, the infamous lover's kiss oil, distilled from the petals of the night-blooming cereus, harvested at midnight by torchlight chanting. You assemble your supplies, candles, fresh petals, and a dash of moon water collected during your last misadventure. As you light the candles and begin your midnight distillation, the room fills with the scent of exotic flowers and impending disaster. You whisper incantations that sound like the chorus of a deranged playwright. The oil drips into a silver bowl, shimmering like liquid moonlight. You inhale deeply, hope mounting, before remembering that every remedy in history carries a hidden curse. You dip your fingertip into the oil and press it to your lips, then plan to brush it onto Aurelia's cheek during your next encounter. But as dawn's light seeps through the shutters, you realize falling in love by potion is no less absurd than expecting a unicorn in the form. True love, it seems, requires more than a dose of crushed beetles and mystical mumbo-jumbo. It demands courage, wit, and maybe a willingness to face rejection without anaphylaxis. You pocket the half-full vial of oil, determined to document your failures as cautionary tales in your own upcoming manuscript. Love Potions, a cautionary tale of blisters, burns, and broken hearts. You stretch, feeling the ache of survival in the past, the desperation, the absurdity, and the fleeting spark of hope that keeps you brewing, dreaming, and eventually moving on. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll venture into medieval Europe's blood-soaked love elixirs, Renaissance charms that could summon angels or plagues, and why your great-great-grandmother's true love potion probably got her burned at the stake. Strap in. It's going to be a bumpy ride through the alchemist's worst nightmares. Part 2 opens in the dim glow of a medieval apothecary's back room, where the flicker of tallow candles casts jittery shadows across shelves groaning with dusty jars. You've survived your disastrous ancient love potion exploits, but the Middle Ages offer fresh horrors, and new ingredients guaranteed to leave you either hopelessly in love or hopelessly cursed. You slip through the iron grille of the apothecary's window, satchel in hand, and find Father Godwin hunched over a mortar of bone. He looks up, eyes bloodshot. "Back so soon, my child?" he rasps. You nod, handing over your empty vial. "Teach me the secrets of medieval elixirs," you demand, voice hushed so you don't attract the Inquisition. He smiles, revealing teeth blackened by tobacco, and maybe something less legal. "Very well, but be warned, love potions then were brewed with more risk than a knight's charge at Agincourt. First ingredient, crushed unicorn horn, also known as powdered narwhal tusk, sold under strict penalty of heresy. Father Godwin scoops a pinch from a hidden jar labeled for royalty only. You cough as he blows the dust into your face. You can't tell if you're allergic or blessed with unseen powers now. He murmurs, "This binds the heart," and seals the jar. You pay a king's ransom in groats and tuck it away. Next, he presents a vial of blood of St. Valentine, likely chicken's blood colored with beet juice. He insists it must be drawn precisely at the stroke of midnight on February 14th, or it'll cause senseless trembling and impure dreams. You peer at the crimson liquid, imagining yourself chained in fevered nightmares. Still, you hand over more coins, your landlord banging on the door in the next room, demanding rent, be damned. Step 3, heart's ease, blossoms, a plant that, in your fingers, looks like a damp, poisonous rag. Godwin plucks leaves, crushes them, and warns, one drop too many, and you'll writhe with stomach cramps for days. You nod bravely, stuffing the leaves into a pouch. Now the true medieval challenge, mortar and pestle. You grind unicorn dust and heart's ease leaves together, chanting fragments of Latin prayers that Google definitely didn't verify. The mixture turns a ghastly gray, vaguely reminiscent of soot and despair. Godwin adds the St. Valentine's blood drop by drop, each drop accompanied by an ominous clang from a nearby iron bell. You shudder, but you're already too invested to quit. You pour the slurry into a pewter chalice and stir with a willow twig. Then Godwin hands you a vial of dragon's breath, actually just really potent brandy infused with peppercorns, labeled to scare paprika-hungry novices. You swallow a sip to activate the spell, coughing violently as fire roars in your throat. A tear streams down your cheek. Tears, Godwin instructs, heighten the binding properties. At last, your medieval elixir is complete. You cradle the dark gray liquid, envisioning your unsuspecting crush, Lady Isabella of the neighboring manor, drinking it and pining for you like a lovesick troubadour. You ink a delicate note. Sweet Isabella, partake of this draught and know my undying devotion. You seal it with a dab of vermilion wax, unaware that vermilion often bore toxic arsenic traces. Sneaking into her rose-wreathed garden at the manor's edge, you place the note and vial atop a marble bench. You shiver under the moonlight, debugging your own courage like a faulty code. Then you vanish into the hedges. The next morning, you wait behind an oak. Dew sifts through your hair like thousands of tiny eyes. You hear her footsteps, soft, measured. She approaches, sees your offering, and lifts the vial. In one poised gesture, she uncorks it and, before you can scream, takes a deep swig. Her eyes flutter closed. You step forward. Isabella, you gasp. She sways on her feet, then staggers. A high-pitched giggle escapes her. Oh, thirsty, she murmurs, before collapsing in a fit of violent hiccups. You rush to her side as she retches rose-scented bile. Garden statues witness your panicked dance, pillars weeping lichen in horror. Finally, she gulps air, looks at you with watery eyes, and whispers, "What have I done?" Word spreads that the wretched wanderer attempted sorcery. The steward drags you before the local lord, who demands justice. You're told to recant your misdeeds or face the stocks. Blushing and trembling, you admit you sought only love. The lord sneers. Love potions are for fools and heretics, he declares, ordering you flogged with willow rods. Isabella, feeling guilty, drops a handkerchief into your arms, embroidered with her crest and an apology scrawled in gilt ink. It's worth nothing in this court, but to you, it's a token that love and pain indeed dance as one in history's cruel ballroom. Bruised and humiliated, you stagger home on 2 literate crutches, 1 foot blistered, 1 ego shattered. Still, your medieval misadventure yields material. Notes on unicorn dust hallucinations, mandatory confession to the local priest, and vivid memories of fashioning your own spiked stool strap as an improvised restraint. But the Middle Ages are only the beginning. Next up, Renaissance Italy, where love charms are entwined with poison. Venetian courtesans selling ambrosia of the heart, mixing belladonna for dilated pupils and opium for docile devotion, a lethal cocktail that oozed into palazzo intrigues like spilled wine. We'll meet the alchemical wizards who claim they turned human tears into philosopher's gold, only to bankrupt and blind their patrons. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll follow a hapless suitor through Parisian streets of the Enlightenment, discover why love letters once required code books, and how 19th century spiritualists used seances to conjure lovers from the grave. Brace yourselves, history's most absurd, tragic, and utterly hilarious love magic rituals await. Part 3 unfolds in the glittering chaos of Renaissance Venice, where love charms were sold alongside carnival masks and every lagoon breeze carried a whiff of intrigue. You step into a narrow calle, the pavement slick with morning dew and stray fish scales from the day's catch. Your goal, procure the infamous ambrosia of the heart, a love potion so coveted that procuring it requires a network of courtesans, apothecaries, and self-styled alchemists, each more dubious than the last. You begin at the Rialto market, elbowing through merchants hawking coral combs and saffron threads. A crimson-clad courtesan named Isabella greets you from beneath her lace-trimmed veil. Her perfume is a heady swirl of jasmine and belladonna. Yes, she's the one who sells belladonna petals of obedience. You seek ambrosia? She purrs. You nod, handing over 3 ducats. She tilts her head, measuring your sincerity. Follow me, she whispers, leading you down a hidden alley behind rickety stalls. You arrive at a masked doorway bearing a fading crest of a griffin. Isabella raps twice in secret code. The door opens to a velvet-lined corridor where torches flicker like impatient eyes. A short man in a velvet doublet emerges, Bartolomeo the alchemist, rumored to have turned his own tears into philosopher's gold. He beckons you into his inner sanctum, a small chamber filled with copper stills, carnelian-studded crucibles, and stained glass windows depicting Cupid in various embarrassing poses. Bartolomeo swirls a crystalline vial containing liquid the color of aged wine. Behold the ambrosia, he announces. 1 drop on the lover's pillow, and they will dream only of you. You eye the vial as if it might bite. This potion, he continues, contains violet syrup, crushed pearls for purity, a tincture of opium poppy to soften the will, and a trace of belladonna to dilate the eyes in adoration. You gulp, imagining your crush's pupils ballooning like moons. He hands you the vial in a nest of velvet. You tuck it into your cloak. Armed with ambrosia, you wander Venice's labyrinthine streets, heart pounding with possibility and mild terror. Your target, Contessa Lucrezia, married to a powerful marquis whose nerves are as brittle as Venetian glass. You slip into Lucrezia's palazzo under pretense of delivering a sealed letter from afar, dovetailed with a request for her confidences. A footman leads you through frescoed halls to a private salon, where Lucrezia reclines on silken cushions, her face framed by a halo of amber hair. You bow, present the letter, and discreetly an embroidery-tied scrap of silk soaked in ambrosia. Lucrezia pricks her finger on the frayed edge, and, before you can stammer excuses, rubs the silk against her pillowcase later that night. You leave, convincing yourself that real magic lies in anticipation, not in dubious tinctures. That evening, dusk dripping into canal waters, you spy Lucrezia emerging on her balcony, her eyes unfocused, her gaze wandering toward your empty street. You rush forward. She smiles wanly and calls your name. I cannot sleep. Your letter haunts my dreams. Your chest warps with triumph until you notice her voice trembling, not with desire, but with insomnia. Ambrosia's opium backfires. She's trapped in a dream cloud, unable to wake. Panicked, you scour Venice for an antidote. You recall Isabella's half-warning. A drop of nightshade blooms can cure the sweetest poison. Nightshade? Deadly in the wrong hands. You race to the apothecary's shop of Maestro Pietro, a librarian turned herbalist with a penchant for goat's blood teas. He peers at you through thick spectacles. Nightshade blooms, yes, but mix with mandrake root and a spoonful of honey to bind the toxins, or it will kill her. He scribbles instructions on a scrap of parchment, charging you half your remaining ducats. You pay and rush off. By lantern light, you concoct the antidote. Black nightshade petals, mandrake dust, clotted honey, all simmered in wine until the liquid glows garnet. You deliver it personally to Lucrezia's chambers, where she lies entwined in silk sheets, trembling. You coax her to sip, her lips slurred as she gulps the mucilaginous cure. She shudders, then sighs, and her eyes clear like polished glass. She thanks you in a voice husky with relief. No declarations of undying love, but an invitation to dine as her guest tomorrow. Score 1 for survival, 0 for true romance. You attend her banquet the next night. Courses of saffron-dusted risotto, roast pheasant glazed with pomegranate, and fritters shaped like Cupid's arrows. Between bites, Lucrezia quizzes you on alchemy and philosophy, her mind sharpened by the antidote. She laughs at your absurd tales of love potions gone awry, and for a fleeting moment you glimpse camaraderie deeper than enchantment. Yet beneath the laughter lies a solemn truth. In Renaissance Italy, love and poison were 2 sides of the same Venetian coin. As the festivities wane, Lucrezia escorts you through moonlit loggias to the balcony overlooking the Grand Canal. Gondolas glide beneath like black swans. She presses a folded note into your hand, an address in the Castello district where, if you dare, you may find both friendship and understanding. No potions required. You tuck the note into your doublet, heart fluttering not from narcotics but from genuine hope. On your way back through the alleys, you reflect on the absurdity you've endured, lacing belladonna into silk, chasing antidotes at midnight, and bargaining with courtesans and alchemists alike. Love charms in the Renaissance were cocktails of exotic ingredients and inflated promises, mortal risk for fleeting affection. Back in your own lodgings, you catalog your journal, recipes for ambrosia, the nightshade antidote, and scribbled mental notes on Lucretia's compassion. You light a candle, watch the flame dance like a lover's sigh, and record a caution. Beware, that magic meant to ensnare the heart can ensnare the mind. True bonds are forged not by tinctures but by shared trials. You tumble into restless sleep, dreams fluttering between poisoned ambrosias and moonlit banquets. Dawn finds you with one last task. Prepare for part 4, where we'll journey through Enlightenment France, codebook love letters, phantom kisses summoned by mesmerists, and the birth of Valentine's cards that nearly started wars. Sharpen your quills and steel your nerves. History's most outlandish love charms are yet to come. You awaken to the crackle of candle wicks guttering in the chill of an 18th century French dawn. Part 4 begins not with unicorn horn or belladonna, but with ink-blotted quills and nervous hearts. The age of enlightenment, when love charms took the form of coded letters, mesmerist seances, and delicate printed cards that could ignite scandal or war. You slip into the daedal of cobblestone streets before the city is fully awake. Your mission today, deliver a secret missive, one of the first true love letters in code. Your patron, the Vicomte de Laval, swears his beloved Mademoiselle Beaulieu will fall for him if only she can decipher his heartfelt cipher. You clutch the folded sheet, margin coded in a grid that reads, "Meet me at sunrise beneath the Pont Neuf," and hurry to her hotel particulier. Before that, though, you must procure the indispensable tool, invisible ink. You slip into a perfumer's shop where Madame Rosette sells rare essences. You trade a silver écu for a vial of lemon juice, the most common reagent, and a drop of tincture distilled from squeeze of crushed elderflowers, a supposedly secret enlightenment enhancement. The perfumer warns, write swiftly lest your words vanish permanently, and pray your courier does not taste the paper thinking it is sweet. Back in your garret, you unfold the blank sheet and write your cipher key in lemon juice, a neat 10 by 10 grid mapping letters to numbers, a triumph of reason over chaos. You allow it to dry, then overlay the coded message in elderflower-scented ink. You fold it carefully, seal with wax, and stamp the Vicomte's crest, a dove carrying an olive branch. His confidence swells at your craftsmanship. Nothing says "I love you" like a letter requiring a week's study to decode. Mid-morning finds you navigating narrow passages behind the Louvre to reach Mademoiselle Beaulieu's door. A lady's maid greets you, politely inquires about your business. "A package from the Vicomte," you reply, offering a curt bow. She takes the letter with a furtive glance. You watch her hurry inside, convinced you'll be off the hook. And in truth, you are until tomorrow, when she emerges clutching the empty envelope, face alight with intellectual triumph. Next on your agenda, attend a demonstration of animal magnetism, the latest craze for bending hearts and wills without a single drop of potion. The celebrated Dr. Mesmer himself has set up a salon in the Faubourg Saint-Germain. You purchase a ticket for 10 livres, curious whether he can truly charge a chamber with invisible forces that leave one lover longing for another. Inside the gilded hall, throngs of aristocrats drift between iron-rimmed bouquets filled with water and magnets. Dr. Mesmer, a flaming-haired showman, strides about in a green velvet coat, scattering around metal rods. You take a seat on a wooden bench. A gentleman beside you claims he came to cure his lumbago, but instead found himself weeping over his mistress's portrait. You smile skeptically, yet when Dr. Mesmer's hypnotic voice begins recounting tales of star-crossed lovers, you feel your pulse quicken. He directs you to hold hands with your neighbor, forming a human chain. Fingers tingle, pupils dilate. You begin to perceive vibrations that seem to flow from neighbor to neighbor like a lover's sigh. Suddenly, a young marquise near you swoons, head lolling forward as if overcome by longing. Her maid rushes forward. The audience murmurs with delight. Dr. Mesmer proclaims success. You exit the salon shaky, convinced you've experienced the thrill of orchestrated empathy, proof that in the Enlightenment, science and seduction danced a delicate minuet. That evening, you attend a soirée at the Abbé's salon, a gathering devoted to romantic science. There, you encounter philosophers debating mechanistic love. Does attraction arise from chemical imbalances or from the elevation of the soul? You sip burgundy wine as the abbé holds forth on the calorific exchange of sublime affection. He distributes miniature Valentine's cards, printed on fine parchment, each adorned with a rococo cherub and a verse in limerick form. You examine yours. When dearest Rosalie spies my sentiments in Cupid's guise, her ruby cheeks will glow and winds of ardor blow. Unless she suspects this device. The cards are delightful, but not merely whimsical. Any misprint or undisclosed author could spell libel. You spot the Comte de Florimond reading his card with alarm. Someone has mistakenly printed for Rosalie's aunt. He blushes scarlet as the salon erupts in laughter. The social peril of love ephemera is clear. A printer's error can blow reputation sky high. Later, as you stroll along the Seine with the Vicomte, he pulls the coded letter from his coat pocket. She solved it, he breathes, and awaits me. You grin, pleased that your cipher held up to Mademoiselle's sharp mind. And yet, he hesitates. But I hear she now seeks another admirer, an English poet who sends her blank sheets for her to write back. You sense the absurdity. Love in the Enlightenment is about wit and wagging tongues, not just secret potions. You advise the Vicomte to sharpen his own verse, lest his code prove no match for a true bard. Alas, not every charm in this era is as benign as ruby-tipped Cupid cards or lemon juice ink. You receive a summons to the Hôtel de Ville. A client, furious that his philosopher's talisman failed to win his married mistress's heart, has pressed charges of fraud. You discover that the alchemist who sold talismans of lodestone, tiny metal plates said to attract love when worn over the heart, was nothing more than a rogue tinsmith with a flair for pseudo-scientific jargon. The client demands restitution. You watch as the magistrate lectures on consumer protection centuries before its time. The tinsmith is fined and banished, but the court's admonitions echo. Science cannot buy affection. At best, it can provide theatrical props for the desperate. As night deepens, you retire to a small inn on Rue Jacob, feet aching from cobblestones. Before sleep, you draft your final reflections in a leather-bound journal. In the age of reason, love charms took the shape of ciphered letters, salon spectacles, and printed fancies. Their folly lay not in the ingredients, but in the belief that the human heart, complex, stubborn, and ever fickle, could be tamed by lemon juice, magnets, or quill-tipped whimsy. True devotion demands presence, not prescription. Your candle guttering, you allow yourself a wry smile. Whether in Rome or Venice, the Middle Ages or Enlightenment, each epoch's love magic carries the same lesson. Abandon hope of shortcuts, for love's true alchemy is lived, not laced. You drift to sleep dreaming of unsent letters, whispering seances, and cherubic card printers, resolve that history's absurd potions and charms offer both laughter and caution for anyone bold enough to court the impossible. Imagine hauling barrels of ale before sunrise, scrubbing sticky floors slick with last night's spills, and all before you've had a single taste of breakfast. Welcome to your life as a 17th century tavern barmaid. You wake in your cramped attic room, the dawn light slitted through a cracked window pane. Your head throbs from yesterday's tavern chorus, the bawdy songs, the clank of mugs, the roar of drunken laughter. There's no time to nurse a hangover. The tavern's back door swings open at first light. You dress in the same coarse linen shift you've worn since you were 12, knotting your skirts high to avoid mud and muck. Your feet slip into worn leather shoes that pinch like newborn foals, but there's no mercy for the weak in this business. By the time you reach the common room downstairs, your lungs fill with the pungent perfume of stale ale, sour milk, and last night's tobacco smoke. The barkeep, old Widow Fletcher, stands behind the bar, polishing a battered tankard with a rag that's never seen soap. She nods at you, no good morning, only a curt gesture. Mop that floor, girl. Task 1, floor duty. With a heavy pail of soapy water in one hand and a straw broom in the other, you scour the oak boards. Each pass lifts a murky tide of spilled ale. barley husks, and the occasional half-chewed cheese crust. The scrub water darkens until it looks like porter. Bending over the sudsy sea, you remind yourself, at least you're not cleaning the privy outside, where the stench could fell a horse. Task 2. Draft pulling. You hoist your skirts again and shuffle to the tap room, where 6 wooden casks lie on their sides, each marked in chalk. Strong ale, small beer, October stout, spiced sack, cider, and the dreaded Molly's Mystery Brew. You grip the brass, tap, brace your shoulder, and wrestle the bung free. A frothy head of liquid hisses upward, and you thrust a pewter mug beneath it, watching amber waves tumble in. One hand on the tap, the other catching drips, you ladle the first pint to a lonely farmer who's arrived early to secure his usual bench. Task 3. Customer management. The tavern fills swiftly, farmers, laborers, traveling merchants, the occasional country squire, and every scrap of scum and villainy in between. You memorize orders: 2 pints of small, half a mug of cider, 3 farthings on tick, and dart between tables like an acrobat. Fathers argue about crop yields, sailors bellow sea shanties, a young shepherdess ducks behind her brother when a lecherous cattle drover sidles near. You smile, pour, and take a coins, counting out change on stained fingers without a single misstep, lest you face Widow Fletcher's wrath. Mid-morning brings the first entertainment. Old Tom the tinker comes in and begins recounting his latest mishap, how he welded his own boot to the forge iron and spent the night hopping on one foot. The room erupts in guffaws, mugs crash, a few coins clang onto the floor. You dodge in and out, collecting stray purses, offering more ale, and consoling the spilled stew of a weeping pig seller. Every laugh is a reminder. You exist to facilitate chaos, to be both shield-maid and sweat-maid in a world eager for oblivion by ale. Task 4. The midday rush. Soldiers billeted nearby pour in as their captain gives them leave. Swords dragging, boots caked in mud, faces still tight with discipline. They demand oysters, roast meats, and rounds of sack. You scramble to fill pewter platters with crusty bread, salted beef, and pickled onions that bite at your tongue. You know better than to meet a soldier's eyes. A careless glance could end with you dashing between tables, carrying 2 jugs of ale and a roast partridge while he whips out a coin purse and tips generously, only to mock you when you stumble. You steal your expression into a mask, polite, unobtrusive, unbreakable. Between the drumming of hungry fists and clamor of voices, there's the micro-battle of tithes and tabs. The barkeep scribbles in her chalk ledger, John Fletcher owes 6pence, Mall Draper paid, Captain Reed, tick for tomorrow. You memorize the ledger's lines by heart, praying you don't mix up names. An error could cost you a beating or a night in. The stocks. By afternoon, your arms ache from lifting pails, your back throbs from bending, and your voice is hoarse from calling. Ale! Ale for the tired and thirsty. But you pause only long enough to swipe a stolen sip of strong ale from the edge of a mug, just enough to blur the memory of the morning's fatigue. Immediately, you regret it. The swirl of strength sets your stomach roiling. No real barmaid ever gets drunk. The job demands vigilance. You wipe your mouth with the back of your sleeve and steel yourself for the evening. Task 5. The special. Today's special is a roasted rabbit smothered in onion and ale gravy, perfect for soaking up the day's drinks. The kitchen is a low, smoky cavern where fire crawls beneath black pots and rats skitter across the beams above. You grab a platter, balancing it on your hip, and navigate through crowds to deliver it to a rowdy dozen at the back table. They hoot and slap your hand when you set it down. You curtsy gracefully, though inside you're thinking of the one pampered bite you'll steal when all have left. Evening looms, and the tavern transforms again. Candles flicker in iron sconces, lanterns swing low, and a minstrel tunes his battered lute in the corner. A stiff breeze rattles the shutters, dragging in whispers of approaching winter. Patrons cluster around the hearth, wives from town gossiping in low tones, tramps warming ragged coats, and the tavern's semi-permanent fixture, old Giles, who tells the same ghost story every night. You pour ale to the rhythm of his narrative, wiping a bead of sweat from your brow even as the hearth's embers glow with heat. As night deepens, the real trials begin. Brawls over spilled ale, barmaids trapped between dueling patrons, and the occasional theft, from coins to ribbons torn from your braided hair. You learn to move with stealth, spirited enough to snatch back a dropped mug before the scoundrel can pocket it, nimble enough to sidestep a flying tankard hurtling toward your head. You hold 2 mugs in one hand, cradle a third under your arm, and deliver the fourth on a balancing tray. Bullets or broken bottles might fly. You know to duck and weave. When the last mug is drained and the final copper tossed onto the bar, Widow Fletcher claps you on the shoulder. "Well done, girl, close up." You fetch the mop again, scrub down benches, and stack chairs atop tables. Each movement echoes in the empty hall, a mocking replay of the day's symphony. Outside, the moon peers through drifting clouds and you lock the heavy door, elbow deep in grime, to the howl of distant dogs and the promise of another dawn. Finally, you trudge up to your garret, body creaking like the tavern's rusty hinges. You collapse onto your straw-stuffed pallet, clothes still damp with sweat and ale. Before sleep claims you, you think of the day's coins, barely enough for a crust of bread and a sip of small beer tomorrow. You whisper a bitter toast to yourself, to survival, not prosperity. As your eyes close, you know you'll wake before dawn for the same absurd ballet, flogging floors, hauling ale, dodging brawls, and flirting just enough to coax coins from calloused hands. Because in 17th century England, a barmaid's life is a perpetual high-wire act. No safety net, only the roar of the crowd and the sting of every passing day. And come morning, you'll do it all again. You drag yourself down the creaking stairs before the sun fully wakes, but already the morning chill has chased the sleep from your bones. There's no rest for a tavern barmaid, especially not in the hours before the town's clock tower bell clangs its first warning. Part 2 of surviving a 17th century English tavern begins with your most dreaded chore, hauling and loading barrels. You shove open the back door to the cobbled yard, where 5 massive oak casks lie on their sides, slick with moss and yesterday's drippings. 2 scrawny stable hands hover, eager to shirk their own duties. You heft the first barrel by its iron hoop, staggering under its weight until your shoulder screams. Each barrel holds upwards of 50 gallons, nearly half a ton of ale or cider. You roll it along wooden beams laid like tracks, guiding its path with bruised forearms. Widow Fletcher's voice drifts through the door. "Mind the step, girl." You curse under your breath, pray you don't mishandle it and flood the yard, or, worse, crack the barrel and lose a cask of precious brew. Once the barrels are in place, you secure them on their stands, wedging tiny wooden pegs into grooves so they won't burst free under eager taps. You pause only to wipe sweat from your brow before sprinting back inside. There's a morning crowd forming already. At the bar, the first chime of the clock sends laborers hurtling through the door. They carry lunch pails and tools, but they don't leave their thirst at home. You fling open back doors, shout, small beer here," and brace for the stampede. Jostled by elbows and booted feet, you catch mugs before they clatter to the floor, fill them at breakneck speed, and bark out prices. 3 pence a pint, 1 for a penny if you buy 5. Some buy 5, most tip you a copper for your speed. You tuck it into your apron, a small treasure against tomorrow's bread shortage. Next comes the hardest part of your pre-noon shift, keeping the patrons from fouling the floor, or worse, each other. You roam between tables, steadying the rowdy, coaxing stools back into place, and breaking up the occasional spat before the town constable arrives. One militiaman, bristling in buff jerkin, glowering like a hog in a sty, accuses the chap next to him of stealing his tankard. You step in, voice firm. "Sergeant, no quarrel here. Let's call it a misunderstanding over identical mugs." The militiaman grunts, snatches his own mug from the table, and storms off. You exhale, glad to have dodged a confrontation. You'll get neither bonus nor commendation for heroism, only the fleeting pride of keeping your head intact. By mid-morning, the kitchen's cries announce the arrival of baked meat pies, the tavern's delicacy for anyone with a spare 6 pence. You dash to the scullery, where you juggle steaming platters through a narrow doorway, praying your hands don't slip on greasy handles. A horde of apprentices lines up, their fingers twitching for gravy, while the cook, Master Bragg, a surly fellow with a permanent grimace, orders you to garnish the pies with parsley and to mine the drippings. You plate the pies on wide wooden trencher boards, heft them onto your shoulders, and weave through the crowd to deliver to the biggest spenders. A trio of silk-clad merchants who toss you a shiny coin apiece. You bite back a smile. This is the only warmth you see beyond the hearth's embers. Afternoon brings a lull, but only a false one. You sweep the tables, refill spittoons because tobacco chewers never wait, and collect empty mugs. As you stack them on a shaky wooden shelf, you reflect on the curious solidarity among barmaids. If you nod to the apprentice at the next alehouse, she'll nod back, a silent bond of shared misery. You discreetly exchange tips. He swears by carrying a scrap of bread to soak up spills. You teach her how to right a tilted table with nothing but an old coin and a prayer. These micro skills keep you afloat in a sea of exigencies. Then, without warning, the midday jitney of traveling bards arrives, minstrels and peddlers who demand free ale in exchange for entertainment. They prance behind the bar, hover around your station, and chide you for not appreciating art. You steal yourself. Widow Fletcher taught you not to be swayed by flattery. You fill 2 mugs with ale and 2 with sack, expensive but worth the piece, and slide them across. The laid bard tips his hat. The others strum off into the corner. Their first tune is a ditty praising the tavern's ale as nectar fit for angels, which would be fine if they stopped mid-chorus to vomit behind a barrel. You reach for your mop, a small sacrifice. Late afternoon delivers the day's most dangerous patron, the highwayman on leave. He swaggers in, cloak still damp from dew, his pistol tucked at his belt. He demands you stir the ale in your eyes, dramatics for demanding a free round. You oblige with an extra foamy mug and a coy smile so practiced it's almost involuntary. He tosses you a gold guinea without counting, nods with satisfaction, and flirts like his life depends on it. You know better than to trust a highwayman's generosity, but you pocket the coin, enough to buy new shoes next month if you dare. As dusk settles, the tavern takes on its final guise, a roaring furnace of curses, wagers, and broken bottles. You fight off patrons seeking a final drink before curfew. 1 more ale, miss, and a dance with your hand. You oblige a foolish dance, 2 steps of reel, a curtsy, and a dodge when he overreaches. Your skirts swirl, your breath hitches, you remind yourself to keep your distance. Widow Fletcher watches from behind the bar, arms crossed, ready to intervene if needed. Closing time approaches, an uneven signal marked by that evening's final stoop, the last tankard of communal beer. The barkeep raises it in a mock blessing. Everyone joins in, a final horde of slurred hears echoing through rafters. You serve it solemnly, then slam the tankard down behind your back so the foam doesn't splash your face. In that moment, the clientele dissolves. They stagger out into the night, some into waiting coaches, others into the gutter. Your last shift is cruelly mundane, stacking chairs, mopping the same floor you cleaned at dawn, and dragging yet another barrel to the storeroom. Your arms quiver, your back aches, your lips feel raw from shouting. The lantern's dim glow reveals the stubborn stains you'll never truly erase. At midnight, you lock the bar door, leaving behind the echoes of laughter and anger. You trudge up to your attic through the silent courtyard, each step feeling heavier than the day before. You collapse onto your straw mattress, clothes damp with sweat and spilled ale. You count the day's earnings, a handful of coppers, 2 pennies in silver, and that single guinea tucked at your waist like a sunbeam in darkness. Before sleep steals you, you whisper a promise. Tomorrow you'll do it all again, because a barmaid's life is born from routine and grit. You close your eyes to the distant clop of horses returning to the stables, the echo of a town unsettled by its own needs. In the merciless world of a 17th century tavern, survival is measured not in comfort, but in the ability to greet dawn with the same grim determination. And perhaps, if fortune allows, a small taste of warm ale at day's end. You wake to the sound of roosters crowing, though in truth, it's just Widow Fletcher rattling her broom against the rafters, signaling the start of yet another mad day. Part 3 of surviving your 17th century barmaid odyssey begins before dawn's light, in the hazy half-world where dreams of comfort die on splinters of half-rotten floorboards, pre-dawn prep in the gathering storm. You haul yourself out of bed, joints cracking like old leather hinges. Your shift doesn't pause for sunrise. By the time the sky bleeds pink, you're at the back door, ready to wrestle more barrels. But today, the yard holds an extra hazard. A runaway cart overturned in the narrow lane, its passengers, 2 milkmaids, staggering among the barrels, milk spilling across the cobbles. You skitter past them, heedless of their shrieks, and heave a barrel free of the debris. A milkmaid ducks your elbow and hurls a bucket at you. You catch it with your foot and hold it aloft like a trophy. No time to apologize. You roll the barrel into place, heart hammering, as dawn's first church bells toll. Breakfast and breakfast thieves inside. The tavern's floor is still damp from the previous night's mop. You navigate by memory. Mop bucket to your right, broom propped by the hearth, one lone half-eaten crust of barley bread on the windowsill. Your morning meal. But as you approach, you see two small fingers slipping that crust into a hungry child's mouth. You recognize the child as Tommy the urchin, a fixture born of filth and desperation. You could shoo him away, but he's sicker than you are, and the widow won't notice a single crust missing. You slide the remaining half into your apron pocket for later and let Tommy scuttle off, crumbs raining like tiny blessings. The breakfast rush. By the time the town's apprentices and craftsmen trudging to work filter in, you're already exhausted. They demand a dram of sack to cure the morning's chill, though the chill is mostly in their spines from sleeping on cold floors. You twist the cork with numb fingers, pour sharp wine into pewter tankards, and serve it with a practiced grin. A mason, his hand still broken from yesterday's work, slaps you on the backside, for luck. You bite back a sharp retort, luck's for fools, and instead hand him his wine. He tips you a farthing, which you pocket, and staggers out breathing steam. Mid-morning, the Lord's retinue arrives. You hear hoofbeats before you see them. The Marquess and his retinue have arrived for his weekly tour of estates. His men swarm the tavern like locusts. You extract yourself from floor mopping duty and plunge into the fray. Ale, ale for our noble guests, you call and set to work. The Marquess himself sits at a long table, a pompous windbag and velvet doublet and lace cuffs. He waves for a flagon. You fill it, watching his men guzzle like pigs at the trough. One of his knights, beefy, scarred, smell of stale sweat, leers at you as you pass. You keep your eyes squarely on the flagons, hoping the Lord's bounty will cover the extra cider spilled by drunken squires. The Marquis clinks his mug and delivers a toast to our faithful barmaid. You bow low, but inside you're calculating whether the sixpence he tosses your way will buy earplugs for tonight's bawdy songs. Noon, the siege of luncheon. When the noonday bell tolls, the tavern transforms. Shepherds, drovers, tradesmen all descend for meat pies and cheese. You juggle laden platters, crusty pork pies slick with fat, hunks of stale cheese, slices of rye bread, through an obstacle course of benches and spilled sawdust. A drunk hatter tips his head too far back, sending a tureen of pea soup splattering across your skirts. You blink through a green-brown cataract, stifle a scream, and press on. The cook barks a warning about wasting rations, so you scrape the soup into a bowl for Tommy the urchin, who, by now, has set up camp beneath your bar. You give him half the pie, and he grins so wide it lights up your gloom. Afternoon, the plague cart rolls through. At 2, a rattling cart rounds the corner. 2 men in plague-marked yellow jackets, dead rats at their feet. They pause at your door, toss a coin on the step, and demand small beer that won't kill us. You gulp, but oblige. Rumor is that plague is already in the next county. Heart-pounding, you ladle tepid beer from the sickest cask you can spare into a chipped mug. They depart, clanking bells and rat tails in tow, leaving behind a cloud of dread and a shilling that feels colder than their carbuncle masks. Late afternoon, the entertainment troupe. Just before dusk, the strolling players arrive, fiddler, fortune-teller, and a pair of acrobats. They expect free ale and a corner of floor to perform on. Widow Fletcher grudgingly concedes. You carry them tankards of small beer and rack your brain for entertainment etiquette. The fiddler launches into a lament so mournful it could drown a cat. The fortune-teller peddles future-telling for a penny in tin cups. The acrobats tumble off their toes, knocking matches and candles everywhere. You dodge between tables, sweeping fallen mugs back toward the bar, scolding the players in clipped tones. Save your leaps for my tip cup, not my ceiling beams. They toss you a copper each, your smallest harvest yet, but you pocket it and pray you don't end up as the next surprise guest in their juggling routine. Evening. Brawl, surviving the storm. Sunset brings the real tempest, the night crowd, drunk farmers and soldiers paired off in argumentative dance. You sense violence crackling in the air, thicker than tobacco smoke. A squabble erupts over a spilled pint. The farmer punches the shirtless sailor. The sailor counters with a headlock. Mugs fly like cannonballs. You leap into the scrum, shouting for peace and flicking off flying barley husks. You grab the farmer's arm, pull him from the fray, and kick the sailor's shins until he releases his grip. Both tumble backward, cursing as they scramble away. You stand amid broken glass and spilled ale, chest heaving as Widow Fletcher blows her whistle. The constable arrives, the troublemakers are herded out. You breathe a sigh of victory, another day survived without a broken skull. Closing time, the long crawl home. As the last patrons spill into the night, you gather up the morning's broken dreams, shattered tankard shards, half-eaten crusts, and the echo of laughter and curses. You lock the door, lean your broom against the bar, and wipe your hands on your ragged apron. Outside, the air is cold and still. The innkeeper's cat pads past you, tail high in triumph. You trudge up the lane, muscles screaming, mind buzzing with tomorrow's chores. More barrels, more battles, more barns of ale to slosh. At your attic stairs, you pause to count the day's haul. A couple of coppers, a sheaf of crusts for Tommy, and the uneasy satisfaction of having weathered a day that felled many stronger souls. You unlock your door, slip inside, and drop your apron by the hearth. You kneel to warm your hands by the dying embers and whisper a promise to yourself. Come dawn, I'll do it all again, and maybe, just maybe, I'll live long enough to retire on a pension from a grateful marquis. But for now, you crawl into bed, lulled by the distant twitter of crickets and the faint skirl of a soldier's pipe drifting from a nearby billet. You clutch your few coins like a lifeline, close your eyes on a world where taverns are fierce kingdoms, barmaids are unsung warriors, and survival is the fiercest ale of all. Tomorrow beckons, brighter, darker, and infinitely more absurd, and you'll be here, apron on, broom in hand, ready to serve history another perfect pint of chaos. The sun has finally set, but the tavern's hearth still glows like a dying ember in the emptiness. Part 4 begins in the hour when even the rats grow bold, and every creak of the floorboard sounds like a conspiracy. You've scrubbed floors, poured ale, broken up brawls, and munched stolen crusts for breakfast. Yet tonight's closing shift carries a darker promise. Because in a 17th century English tavern, the dead of night is when secrets seep from the walls, debts demand repayment, and the tiniest spark can set the whole place ablaze. Midnight, toll, and the final orders. At the stroke of 12, Widow Fletcher's rusted bell clangs once, a summons to collect final orders. A handful of stragglers rub bleary eyes at the bar. One moon-drunk peddler, a half-drunk weaver, 2 sullen chimney sweeps. You clamp down the last keg's tap, wet rag in hand, and call out your specials. Warm sack, last bowl of pottage. The peddler staggers forward, pleading for whatever'll keep the cold out. You ladle him a mug of the tavern's gloomiest wine, half vinegar, half regret, and he gulps it like a lifeline. The weaver buys a stale death's head biscuit for his wife. The sweeps pool their pennies for a dram each. You total their shillings, pocket the coins, and offer half the biscuit to Tommy the urchin, who appears once more from beneath the table, eyes bright in the flickering lamplight, clearing the battlefield. With last orders served, the real work begins. You drag your mop across the sticky bar, collecting flecks of tobacco, splashes of ale, and the occasional shard of broken tankard. You stack chairs atop tables in a precarious pyramid that threatens to collapse under its own gloom. The hearth's embers lie dull in the hearth. You shovel in new coals from the scullery's cache, coaxing a flame bright enough to show you the stains no light ever reaches. Each plank you scrub feels older, every nail hole deeper. Time itself seems eager to swallow the tavern whole, the ghost in the corner. As you work, you catch movement in the far corner of the common room. A shadow flickers, though no lantern stands there. The tavern's ghostly patrons, drunken memories of those who've died in these walls, like to tease barmaids on closing nights. You grip your mop handle like a lance and call out, "All clear! Show yourself, knave." Silence answers, save for the hearth's crackle. You scowl, chase away the shiver in your spine, and resume stacking whiskey barrels, reckoning with unpaid tabs. Task 4. Retrieve the unpaid tabs from under tables and behind benches. You pull out wadded up scraps of ledger, Margaret Blake, tick, old Giles still owing 2 pence. The debts pile as heavily as empty mugs. You shuffle through them, erasing marks for those who settled in coin. For the rest, farmers, drunks, soldiers, you'll carry the ledger to Widow Fletcher in the morning. She'll decide which debts to forgive, which to write off as lost, and which to press up the local magistrate's nose. You tuck the ledger under your arm, the weight of each unpaid pint pressing down on your conscience. Last call for water and bread, the tavern's final courtesy. Wine-soaked water and day-old bread, distributed to the town's poor before they wander home to cold floors. You fill 2 large wooden bowls with tepid water drawn from the cistern, then slice the loaf saved from this morning's half-stolen crust. Outside, the night air bites at your cheeks as you slip through the back door. A dozen ragged beggars cluster by the midden, eyes gleaming in hunger. You ladle water and pass bread until each outstretched hand closes around a morsel. Tommy the urchin helps, and you press him into service. Hand them out quick. His grin lights the darkness as he learns your gratitude is more precious than Widow Fletcher's grudging thanks. Locking the doors, returning to the bar, you seize the heavy oak key, worn and warped, and slide it into the massive bolt. The door thunders shut behind you, sealing off wind and whispers. You fasten the iron latch, the echo reverberating like the distant toll of a death knell. You stand in the hush, listening to your own breathing, waiting for the tavern's final confession. The rattle of rats in the rafters, the soft drip of a leaky roof, the faint scrape of a loose shutter. Final sweep of the scullery. Your last trial, the scullery, where half-washed dishes congregate like fallen soldiers. You light a flickering lantern, its halo too small to banish the gloom. Pots line the sink, blackened by broth and neglect. You drag a hoof-stinking rag across the floor, washing the grime into the drain. You plunge pots into scalding water, scrape off caked gravy, and rinse them with the same urgency you once reserved for fetching ale. Each dish you set onto the drying rack is a victory. Each clean pot, a promise of tomorrow's bustle. Moment of reckoning. At 1:30, you collapse onto the low bench behind the bar, chest heaving. Your apron-stained mop rationing a damp embrace. You survey the battlefield. Bar cleared, floor scrubbed. Chairs stacked, dishes done, windows dark. For a breathless moment, the tavern belongs to you alone. You let that taste of solitude settle on your tongue before Widow Fletcher appears at the back door like an ominous epiphany. She stands in the lantern light, arms folded, her silhouette severe as a gallows. "Not bad," she says, voice hushed. "But the barrels still need rolling in the morning, and the new ale arrives at dawn. Be here, girl." She steps back into the dark, leaving you with the final words of the day, unrelenting expectation. Climbing to the garret, you pick up your mop, your battered spear, and hoist it over your shoulder. You trek up the narrow stairs, each step a trial of balance in your aching limbs. The walls are slick with damp, the staircase seems a tunnel into oblivion. You emerge into your attic room, a space so small the rafters press on your shoulders, a window so tiny it frames a sliver of moon. A single mug of small beer. Before you rest, a small mercy remains. A single mug of small beer, donated by Widow Fletcher for her strength and persistence. You cradle the pewter mug in your palms, letting warmth seep into your fingers. You take a slow sip, the familiar bitterness grounding you. It tastes of tomorrow's promise, of debts unpaid, of the relentless rhythm of work and wages. Counting the day's wages, you empty your apron pockets onto the crude wooden trunk. A few coppers, 1 silver penny, the guinea from the highwayman, still cool against your skin, and a smear of stale breadcrumbs saved for breakfast. You count them with trembling precision, enough for a crust and perhaps a hunk of cheese tomorrow, maybe a tinder wick for your lamp. Its survival measured in coin, each piece a totem of your endurance, tucking away tomorrow's chores. Under your pillow, you place the battered ledger with the debts you collected and the scrap of papyrus noting tomorrow's staff schedule. Work the bar from dawn until noon, empty chamber pot behind the privy, collect coals from the manor's cellar, serve lunch pottage by 1, be on tap for evening ale by 3. You stare at the list, each line a chain linking you to sunrise. Closing your eyes on the night watch, you stretch out on your straw mattress, limbs tangled like spilled rope. You hear the tavern breathing around you, the slow drip of water from the roof, the faint scurry of rats, the distant bark of a night dog. You close your eyes and imagine sleep as a far-off continent, unreachable, mysterious, and just beyond your grasp. A whispered promise to survive. Before exhaustion claims you, you whisper your final mantra. One more dawn, and I'll meet it head-on. In this merciless world of barrels, brawls, and borrowed bread, survival is your greatest triumph. The tavern's shadows may press in, and the tasks will never end. But in your battered chest beats a heart undimmed by fear or fatigue. You clutch your ragged blanket to your chin, surrendering to darkness with the fierce gladness of a warrior, finally allowed rest. The tavern lies silent around you, but you know its pulse will next beat at daybreak. And when it does, you will rise again, barmaid, battler, survivor, ready to pour history another perfect pint of chaos.